quick reminder that the mask mandate is still in effect, only for a short period of time. We're waiting on further direction, but at this moment in time, masks still have to be worn indoors. So please help us follow those guidelines. Next, we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. We have new microphones. So, and if two people have them on at the same time, there can be feedback. So when you're done speaking, please just remember to turn them off. All right. Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you for the first report for the virtual online schools.
Thank you, President Anderson Pearson. For our first report this evening, as you discussed, we have Assistant Superintendent Kevin Educator, who will be giving an update on the committee that was looking into, at the request of the board, looking into online school. I'd like to make sure that folks understand we are involved in a virtual option due to COVID. What Assistant Superintendent Educator is reporting on is the online option that we were asked to investigate in January of 2021. Go ahead, Kevin.
So President Anderson Pearson, members of the board, Superintendent Banner, Kevin Ruprecht, principal of Harrison Prep, and I will present our committee report on our Clover Park School District online progress. Next slide, please. The committee started in January 2021. We began a process of reviewing online providers, surveyed stakeholders, and looked at our current virtual program as a source of additional information. Next slide, please. Before we move on, I'd like to define some online terms that were shared with us from the Superintendent of Public Instruction OSPI office. The term first is called synchronous online learning. This means scheduled real-time instruction between the student and a certified teacher or district staff that are supervised by a certified teacher and provides opportunities for live two-way interactive communication online. The next term that you'll hear with us today is asynchronous online learning. Asynchronous instruction means instruction that is prepared by a certified teacher and occurs away from the physical school setting without two-way interaction communication. Alternative learning experience, or ALE, is where some or all the instruction is delivered outside of the regular classroom. And then an online provider is an online program that's defined by a school or program that offers a sequence or set of online courses or grade level coursework that may be taken in a single school term or throughout the school year in a manner that would provide a full educational program if desired by the student. So synchronous online, asynchronous online, ALE, and online provider are terms we will be using today. In the next slide, please. When we look at online schooling, there's two types of funding. The first funding is basic ed funding that funds our normal school settings like Clover Park and Lakes and our elementary schools. And that is funded by the state at a $9,443 per pupil rate. When we look at alternative learning experience, it's funded at a lower rate because students are not in person. It's funded at an $8,726 per pupil rate. And online learning is funded at an ALE rate. And now I'd like to turn this over to Mr. Ruprecht to give us some examples of how funding is considered in an online program. Next slide, please.
Good evening, School Board of Directors and Superintendent Banner. What you see here on this slide and the next slide are various parameters and considerations the committee has been investigating as we have done this work this last year now. What we are looking at, for example, is within a district provided opportunity or a contract services provided opportunity, because what our main objective is to find the best online learning opportunity for our Clover Park School District students. These here are the sum of the major parameters and considerations that we have been investigating. For example, it is important to us that the instruction meets the needs of our students and that the curriculum aligns to our district parameters of our curriculum guides. And a platform, which is the delivery mechanism for online learning, is accessible for our students to maximize their learning efficiency. Next slide, please. We've been reviewing learning opportunities for our students to access the learning for various programs of students. We want to make sure that students that are multi-language learners, students that participate in career and technical education, special education students, advanced placement options, we would like to make sure that we find an opportunity, an online opportunity that meets the needs for the wide variety of students that we serve in our Clover Park School District and theoretically in a future online learning program with Clover Park School District. Next slide, please. We have reviewed nearly 20 online providers, and we've done a deeper examination of these 7 listed here. These 7 have narrowed down to these 7 because they meet a preponderance of the parameters and considerations that the committee has identified as necessary to meet the best needs of our students. Because like I said, it is the objective for this committee to find and or create the most supportive online learning opportunity for all of our students and our community. Next slide.
We surveyed our students who were receiving online learning outside our school district, and we also surveyed our K-5 families in our Pearson virtual program and our 612 families in our Grad Alliance virtual program. In the findings, we had 2 common responses. There's still a high response to COVID and health safety for the students. The second response that commonly we received was that families really like the flexibility of an online learning program. When we looked at the responses from a kindergarten to 5th grade group, there was a high desire for synchronous learning, meaning they wanted a teacher in front of them. And in our 612 group, there was a high desire for social interaction. And now Kevin will review next steps. Next slide, please.
As we continue to move forward, we are deeper looking at the contract services with various providers and or a CPSD provided learning opportunity, or even the potential of a blended opportunity. We are taking into consideration the staffing needs of our learners because they vary between the needs of a K-5 learner, online learner, versus the needs of a middle school or high school learner. The staffing is also impacted by that. Again, I mentioned that our curriculum is essential to make sure that if we are to go a route with the online provider, that their curriculum aims and objectives match those of the Clover Park School District. We want to make sure that we have the technology and IT supports to serve our students and our families. And at some point, we need to be looking deeper into location, i.e., how do we have a nexus of support for communication with our families and our students, even though they are learning online, there still needs to be that nexus of connection. All of this is to be said that we do monitor and looking into the cost that Assistant Superintendent Educator discussed and how that FTE funding and translates to ALE funding for an online learning program. And then we are looking further into collective bargaining agreements as we have received guidance from other school districts who have created their own online schools and given us input on things that we need to be considering. So these are our next steps. Next slide, please.
So with that, at this point, are there any questions?
I have several questions, and thank you for the information you provide us today. Graduation Alliance, aren't we already doing that?
Yes, currently Graduation Alliance runs through our re-engagement program through Open Doors. And we are actually also using Graduate Alliance because it's been so successful with the students in our 612 program.
So my question then is, if we're already using that, why do we have to look at these others?
The other, when we look at a K-12 spectrum, we also have to look at, we break it into kind of chunks, a K-5 program and a 612. And so we could stay with Graduation Alliance. And so we're looking at that and it's going well, but we'll be making little adjustments as we keep moving.
Okay, then if we do it ourselves, one of the things you've highlighted here was need to create or purchase a platform. Any ideas what that would cost?
I don't have the exact cost, but there are a variety of platforms we've been looking at. Obviously, Teams is our one platform that we can use, and we are looking at developing that. If we just use Teams, then we have our platform, and that's our current platform for all our students in the district. There are other platforms like Schoology, Canvas, Blackboard that can also be used. But if we do that, we'd have to look at how that can integrate within our system. And as you know, because of the last year malware attack, we are very conscious about security.
Okay, and then so if we decide to go forward with this and try to do it ourselves, in other words, hire staff that would do this and put our own platform together, any chance, do you think you can do it for the 8726? That the ALE reimbursement?
Yes, that's one possibility, definitely. Right now, because of COVID, because of staffing situations, that's one of the situations that are holding us back from going fully into that kind of model, and we're going to be looking into that this year.
Okay, so you're going to look more, and then you'll give us a better idea whether we can do it for that cost or not.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
The other consideration for that is, are there going to be staff available to prioritize our physical bodies into our in-person staffing at this particular time? And so that would be one more consideration, is being able to hire folks.
Well, I just wanted, for the first question that you had for like why they were looking into this, it's been a while, but we had requested that because COVID was the reason why we had an online platform this year. And then we were looking at a more permanent option because people liked it and it seemed like it might be a good idea. So that was why we had asked for we want to make sure we were having the best option, or if not, maybe a better plan.
There an estimated number of students that would take advantage of this online learning?
Yes, we're estimating currently we have about 500 kids in our virtual programs right now. So we're estimating around that, around close to 200 in the elementary and 300 in the upper levels.
We'd also be looking at interest levels. We have to survey families as to what their interest level would be once COVID is not the issue that it is at this time. So we would really look at that, because again, any school, any program is funded by the number of students that are in there. So we would really have to look at that. And that would also determine whether or not we could do this with our own staff, or if it would be more fiscally responsible to do it with a platform that's already established.
Any estimated timeline for implementation?
Not at this time. We're still operating under the investigatory process. The committee is working on that. And I think next steps, they'll start to fine tune that and look at potential timelines, and of course, bring everything to the board as a consideration for the board to determine, is that the avenue that the board wants the district to go into. Okay, seeing no other questions at
I have
this.
one question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Of the families who were surveyed, was there a concern for participation in co-curricular activities?
It was more at the high school level where they wanted to have more co-curricular activities. And so we did offer them currently, families do have full access to our clubs and sports at their home schools, but also creating separate activities where, they have a meeting at the park or art fairs and things like that would be something we would add.
Okay, thank you.
Reminder to the board that if you, when you speak into the microphone, if you could bring it somewhat proximal and speak directly in once it's on, and then you will project through the speakers adequately. Any other questions from the board before we move to the attendance truancy update? Okay, Deputy Superintendent Laba, would you proceed with the attendance and truancy update?
All right, let me get it pulled up here. All right, thank you, Board President and board members, for the opportunity to present on attendance and truancy policies. I'll be taking questions at the end of the presentation. So the beginning of the review will be the attendance policy, a little bit about our attendance policy during COVID and truancy process, and then some questions. Responding to absences is more effective when it's positive and proactive and not punitive. It's important to involve the student and the student's family when assessing why a student is not attending school on a regular basis. For many valid reasons, students are absent from school. However, when there is communication from the parent, absences add up and can significantly impact a student's opportunity and progress towards learning. Student absences are one of the several key signals to educators that a student might not be on track for educational success. To that end, in addition to the legal requirements for excused absence requirements, there's regulatory support for districts to address excessive excused absences. The policy, or the RCW, Revised Code of Washington, that monitor or drives attendance law. OSPI supports and encourages best practices to address absences with support, database interventions and accommodations, as well as communication as part of a school and district's tiered system for attendance. By parents and or families not excusing absences, it begins the truancy process. Where the same efforts are still required, there is a possible engagement with the court. School staff will keep a record of absence and tardiness, including a record of excuse absence statements submitted by a parent or guardian to document a student's excused absences. The following principles will govern the development and administration of attendance procedures within the district. Per policy, there are 18 published valid excuses for attendance. So you see about half of them on this slide. And then on the next slide, you see the remaining valid excuses for absence, excused absence. Schools and districts are still able to mark a student absent after a certain threshold if their local student information system can differentiate absences due to a tardy and the absences where the student does not attend the class at all. Local systems must be able to exclude tardy absences from a report that's used for the purpose of filing a truancy petition. Clover Park School District approaches this by using a tardy code, e.g. missed most of class or tardy absence, allowing the student to differentiate these absences, or allowing the school to differentiate these absences and respond and intervene accordingly. So OSPI defines a full day absence as missing 50% or greater of the day is absent. An unexcused absence is when a student has failed to attend the majority of hours or periods in an average school day, and the state does not define tardy. Annually in our Parent Family Handbook, we publish our attendance policies. For families, it can be found in Skyward Family Access, as well as for students. In addition, secondary students can access in our Zello platform. Annually, the attendance policies are reviewed with students and staff. And inside of that handbook, you see the definition of absence and how we define tardy and our truancy procedures, as well as military block leave procedures and athletic and extracurricular attendance requirements. So we're going to go into a little bit of data here. Daily attendance has been impacted somewhat by COVID isolation and quarantine. Both types of absences, though, are excused. District data that I'll be showing includes all elementary, middle, and high schools, as well as programs like Open Doors, Furwood, and Early Learning. Charts that you'll be seeing in the next couple slides are coming from our district data dashboard, Canoeit. This dashboard allows school and district administrators to examine attendance trends within their school or schools. For the purposes of this report, I'm using district-wide data. This chart reads from the current school year, so on the left-hand side, to 27-18. For the past 5 years, we have been averaging roughly 90% daily attendance. In this chart, you'll see attendance by grade level. So K-8 averages around 90% daily attendance, with high school dipping below to the mid 80s or to the upper 80s by grade level. Notice on this chart that kindergarten and preschool are at the bottom of the chart. So the bottom two mark preschool and kindergarten attendance. Here's a closer look at daily attendance by high school to date for the year. Harrison Prep in this data includes grade 6-8 as well as 9-12. This chart also includes Open Doors, a very, very small program we call Reentry High School that we have at Thomas Middle School. So here in this frequently asked question, should a student who's absent due to concern about the health risk of COVID be excused? And the answer is yes. However, if the pattern continues or the parent indicates that they're waiting until their student can attend the district's virtual program, the school should contact the parent to discuss the safety concerns. The school can provide information about the COVID mitigation strategies and explore other barriers that can be addressed or resources or supports that can be provided. When appropriate, they can discuss with the parent other educational program options. Districts can and are encouraged to put out a plan in place for any student who's missing a significant amount of school for this reason. If the family has other health considerations, the 504 plan or evaluation should be considered. The school should also be sure to communicate the district's policy on withdrawing students and truancy in a timely fashion, as well as the possibility of a truancy petition if the student does not enroll their student in another education program after being withdrawn. So now we're going to move to truancy procedures. Per policy and procedure 3122 and state law, letters are sent at days 3, 5, 7, and 15 days of unexcused absence. Attendance conferences are after the third unexcused absence for all grade levels. Attendance contracts for all grades are after the 7th unexcused absence. Should attendance not approve, students and families are invited to take part in the Community Engagement Board meeting. If attendance does not improve as a result of the Community Engagement Board conference, then a truancy petition may be filed with the Pierce County Juvenile Court. A little bit more about Community Engagement Board. Originally in state law, they were called truancy boards. However, in the recent adoption of 3122, it was changed to community engagement boards to reflect the positive supposition versus the negative aspect of having to go to court. It's important to have a building administrator attend in order to provide the best outcome. Schools may also include other staff such as counselors, teachers, nurses, or anyone else who can contribute to a student's attendance plan. Also in attendance is Jesus Villegas from Student Services and Pam Sias from the Juvenile Court System. So you can see here on this slide the number of, we scheduled this community engagement boards at the very beginning of the year before the adoption of 3122. And we set all the dates for our community engagement board meetings, and they have various time slots between 2 and 5 p.m. To attend these. We have been meeting more often with families and students to determine barriers to attending school daily. The attendance engagement meetings are less formal than a community engagement board meeting and don't include the juvenile court system. In most instances, the outcome of the attendance engagement meeting is an attendance contract between the student, family, and the school. The community engagement board and attendance engagement meetings are examples of proactive work being done at the schools to limit the number of truancy petitions that need to be filed. If the barriers to attending are removed, the student's attendance improves, and then there is no need to file a petition with the court. So I want to point out here, in the 18-19 year, which was probably the most consistent school year we've had in recent times, we had 11 community engagement boards, or there were truancy boards at that time. So far this year, we've had 11 community engagement boards, so a little past mid-year. So we've met more often with families, and then we've had, in addition, 17 attendance engagement meetings this year, in addition to those 11 community engagement board meetings. In this frequently asked question, can a truancy petition be filed after 7 excused absences in a month or 15 unexcused absences in a school year? And yes, that is the answer, because state law requires us to take action under 28A 225020. Prior to filing a truancy petition, though, the district must take as many steps as possible to substantially reduce the number of unexcused absences. And then this final slide, just an example of how we partner with local agency, Community Schools, at Four Heroes Elementary School, where the CISL, site coordinator, and the school with additional school staff member focus and support student attendance and try to curb unexcused absences. And so they do regular communication outreach to students and families. They can also be included as a community engagement board member. So at this time, any questions?
And thank you. Could you just walk through and tell me how it's going to affect me? I don't show up for school today, and I don't show up for school tomorrow, and finally I hit the magic marker. So I missed 7 days before something starts happening to me.
No, no, we daily make phone calls. We make phone calls, automated phone calls twice daily. So there's a phone call midday. So let's say you missed first and second period of high school, there would be a call out midday to inform the family that you were missing from first or second period. And then there would be an afternoon call as well. So if you still missed third and fourth period, and so gone all day, there'd be a call made there. And then it starts as early as the third absence. So you don't wait till the 7th. You have to start beginning to make contact at the third unexcused absence. So it goes 3, 5, 7. So there are letters generated and contact made.
So they get an automated call. When does a real person get involved?
After that third unexcused absence. So that's when the conferences need to be held.
Okay, and then so when would I show up in front of the board?
You could at any time have that community engagement board meeting. They're all pre-scheduled, so it's really just about whether we need to bring the family and the student to this community engagement board to work out what are those barriers? Can we remove some of those barriers so that you can attend school regularly?
And so the barrier could be, what are some of the excuses people give?
Could be transportation, maybe you're McKinney-Vento and you, maybe you're coming back here to come to school, but maybe we should look at enrollment in the school that's closest to where your temporary housing is. Things like that. Could be waking up on time. Could we get you an alarm clock?
Yeah, okay. I'm just looking at this as there's a lot of work here. Daily unexcused absences range from 750 to 900 per day. That's what your report says.
Right, for all 26. Remember, this includes Furwood, Open Doors, and early learning as well.
Yeah, Open Doors, though, you're telling me that that's almost 100% attendance, so they don't have the problem.
As many, but that's, you know, they have some absences.
But 750 a day, I mean, even if you got one person, you know, I mean, just the time to take attendance and know that and get that reported back, there's a lot of labor cost here.
All of our attendance is recorded in our Skyward student management system. So teachers just mark students absent at the beginning of a period. And that's all automated to the school messenger phone calls, which are automated as well. And then Skyward also prints the truancy letters for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, and 15 days.
So what you're saying is pretty much automated?
A lot of it is automated as part of our school. You know, somebody still has to stuff an envelope or print the letters out, but the letters are pre-generated through our student information system.
And so, I mean, each teacher then, you know, they're pretty faithfully taking attendance every day.
Yes, actually, schools can monitor how well students are, or how well teachers are taking attendance.
Are we getting good results there?
I believe so.
And what's good and what's not good?
Well, I think administrators look to see that teachers are doing it every day on time at the very beginning of each class period or the very beginning of a school day, especially at elementary. Elementary can take attendance 2 times a day at the beginning, early in the morning when kids arrive, and then later in the afternoon, they can take a second attendance measure.
And so they have to go to their computer then for a period of their teaching time to fill out Skyward to make sure that they're there when they do their attendance. How is that?
Yeah, it's just a screen on Skyward, and they just have to mark them absent.
Okay. All right.
A lot of teachers have seating charts in their Skyward screen as well, so they can look at their seating chart on the screen and they know who's absent or present.
So it goes pretty quickly then.
Goes pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Just want to say that there's several, probably half a dozen days during the course of the month that I have my grandchildren with me. And when one of them is gone, I get a call first thing in the morning that they're not there. So I know it's working. And as a parent or a grandparent, custodial person, I am informed. Obviously, they're there with me. Otherwise, we have a different conversation. So I think it must be the automation makes it, obviously simplifies it as opposed to a teacher taking roll every day. And I get the notification. And usually though, if my daughter knows that she has an appointment or something like that, she will call school the night before, or she will contact the school the night before, saving the teacher and the staff time to having to run through this. So that is also a process that parents can do to alleviate just some of the time taking and doing it. So it seems to be very effective. And you know, parents are informed, parents do the informing. It's kind of a win-win situation, I think.
Brian, thank you. I was noticing in the discipline report later on that currently truancy absence rate is at 73. And that's significantly down from previous years. So it looks like something's working as far as the truancy follow-up program. My question is, do we have success reports from like communities and schools Lakewood as to what they do and how they help and why this is working?
We have had annual reports from communities and schools, but I'm thinking now, probably the last one we directly heard from the director there was probably the 18-19 school year. As you know, in the 19-20 school year, we left school abruptly in March, so they probably we probably didn't have that opportunity to have that presentation with them. And then 2021 school year, right, we were remote and hybrid and so on. But we can expect a report from Carrie Pendrick this spring as the result of they measure attendance as well as behavior and as course completion. So they always give us an update of what they've done at each of the schools that they're serving. They have, and it has improved at the schools that they've worked at, but these last couple of years have been a little bit harder to measure.
Thank you. It might be helpful, at least for my benefit, to see reports of success stories and how we've been able to reduce those numbers.
Yeah, one of those opportunities will be the communities and schools breakfast, which is happening later this month. They usually showcase kids from elementary, middle, and high school at that and talk about the success stories behind each one of those students. They don't do all the students that they serve, but they have, well, I say breakfast, but really it's a virtual communities and schools meeting, but it's a great opportunity to hear the work that they do as well as a community.
All right, any more questions? All right. Thank you, Brian.
Okay, at this time, we are going to, as a council team, move into the board accountability plan. Our team will report out on the data that we have to date. Following each goal, the team members will weigh in on their contributions to the goal, and then there will be a period of Q&A after each goal. Following the last goal around financial stewardship, then I will be reading through my document in terms of the board's evaluation criteria or the evidence that I have in my document as related to the board's evaluation criteria of the superintendent. So Brian, I know that you are going to be the MC for the council team and be the PowerPoint slide person as well. So we'll go ahead and proceed with the council team and the accountability plan.
All right, thank you, board president and board members, for the opportunity tonight to present an update on the accountability plan. As the members of the Superintendent Council, we'll go through each of the 6 goals, and there'll be a short update from Tess, Kevin, Leanna, Lori, Greg, or I as the data pertains to our areas of supervision. You'll see also the order of presentation in the agenda that you have tonight. So next slide is for Tess.
Thank you, Brian. Goal 1 focuses on student growth and student achievement. And as you can see in the accountability plan, the data for reading at grade level and smarter balanced proficiency is not yet available, but we did want to share actions being done in schools to ensure growth in reading, math, and science. Because of the impact the pandemic had on our students' learning the past 2 years, the focus on intentional teaching has been really intensified, focusing on core instruction and differentiated instruction based on student need is helping shrink the gaps that many students had. We're also using interim assessment blocks or IABs for grades 3 through 12 to familiarize students to SBA test formats. At elementary, we are also continuing with the success we've had with some online resources like Freckle and Zern, which teaches each student at their instructional level. We're also offering additional supports after the school day, targeting early literacy skills. For the 4 pillars, all of our schools are implementing all 4 pillars. Elementary schools address the pillars through a variety of programs, such as Kids at Hope or Leader in Me, or some other ones some schools are using. But regardless of the program or the strategies, all of them focus on building character, leadership, collaboration, and lifelong learning. And Kevin will now speak to graduation rates and college and career ready.
Our district graduation rate was 88%. This was above the state graduation rate of 83%. All three high schools of Clover Park, Lakes, and Harrison Prep each individually were above the state graduation rate. Our goal is to continue to show growth by preparing all of our students for college and career readiness. We can also group our accountability benchmarks into two categories. The first is around attendance, grade point average, and algebra passing rates. Schools continue to use their engagement teams to support high absenteeism, and tutoring sessions and standards-based practices support student learning. The other is rigorous offerings in advanced placement, international baccalaureate, dual credit, and Running Start programs. Students have the opportunity to take the advanced placement and international baccalaureate IB exams, which allow students to earn college credit. Dual credit offerings allow students to earn both career technical credit as well as community college credit, thus the name dual credit. Other students choose to enter our Running Start program, where students can attend full-time or part-time at a community college, allowing them to earn an associate's degree, which will allow the student to enter a four-year college or university at a junior status. And Brian will now speak to more assessment and career technical education.
As Tess mentioned, currently the state assessment results are preliminary and only the passage rates at the state level have been released publicly. When the state has finalized the data, we'll be able to share the data. OSPI, as you remember, postponed state assessments from the spring of the 2021 school year to the fall of 2021 through a waiver with the federal government. Students were tested on grade level standards from the previous school year. The state also changed the format and length of the fall tests. The fall tests were to provide insight into how students were doing upon return to full-time in-person instruction. The results are not to be used for comparison between past and future administrations of the state assessment. Statewide, the results were down in every grade level and subject area from the previous administration of the Smarter Balance. We began spring testing as early as the last week of March, starting in the high school, and the final testing week district-wide is the second week of June. In this goal also, there's some additional college and career readiness data. They track the number of industry certifications and dual credits earned, as Kevin mentioned. The decline of industry certification from 306 to 98 was a result of starting in a virtual setting. Challenge to earn some certificates in a virtual setting, such as food handler and JRTC, due to the COVID school year. Though we did see an increase in our CTE dual credit course participation, it increased from 50.3 to 51.2 back to the previous levels in 18-19 school year. And then we also did see a slight increase in the number of dual credits earned from 668 to 677, which is still a little bit down. It's still down from the 2018-19 school year, and we hope to rise back up to that level this school year. So questions for goal one?
Any correlation on the graduation rate with educational competency? Any correlation there?
With that, do you mean graduation rate in terms of test scores?
Absolutely. Well, so you get a diploma, but how do we know that we have educational competency?
I think one of the great things about our graduation policy, we have numerous requirements for them. Obviously, earning credits at different levels, the rigor of taking AP, IB is and college-ready courses is there. The dual credits and CTE, your grade points there. The other is the pathway standards. The state understands that kids earn things and learn in different ways. So there are actually 8 graduation pathways, and the SBAC is one of those pathways. So there's multiple ways where kids can show their understanding.
Something I've learned in the last month or so that I didn't know before, and you can maybe confirm it for me, is that if I'm struggling to have all my things done so that I can graduate, all I need to do is get a letter from a community college, and that meets the requirement. So therefore I can get a diploma. Is that true?
It used to be acceptance into community college would meet a pathway, but that is, I believe, not one of the.
What do you mean by
Yeah.
a letter, Director Wagman? Like, just
I've been told that if I haven't met all the requirements for graduation,
Mhm.
that if I can get an acceptance letter from a community college, that meets the requirement, and therefore, and by law, I'm told, community colleges are required to accept everyone. So therefore, if I'm struggling, all I need to do is go get a letter from a community college saying I've been accepted and start school there, and then I'm qualified for a diploma.
I've never heard that, but that's something that we will look into, and I will report back to the board on whether or not that happens or has happened in our district that we're aware of.
Okay,
I know that we do have running start students, my daughter being one of them, and she's accepted into a community college, but for her to graduate, she has to fulfill all of the crossover credits, right?
Mhm.
Whatever she's taking at Pierce College has to meet one of her, has to meet the criteria for graduation at Lakes High School or Clover Park School District. And that's a very cumbersome process, because if you let that slide, then she could eventually graduate with an AA degree, but not graduate with her high school diploma. So we are on top of that. But what you're describing, I haven't heard, but we will look into it and report back to the board.
I don't know if it's true or not. That's why I'm asking. It
Would
just-
you
that
be
was
willing to
interesting.
share your source?
What's that?
Would you be willing to share your source? Was it someone who worked at the district who told you that?
A former employee.
We'll check with the community colleges and look into it for sure. Hey, Kevin, could you, since the question of academic competency and SBA, can you talk a little bit about when the high school SBA score is taken or test is taken, and how much time we have to course correct in a meaningful pathway to graduation?
Yes, one of the standards for SBA is that they go by what they call the degrees of knowledge in terms of standards, and we have to get our students up to a high 2 or better to meet standard. And kids, they move the test to the 10th grade level. So what it's become is a kind of a formative assessment test, because that allows us, wherever the student is at that point, it allows us 2 years to help that student recover and to grow. They can retake the test or take higher level courses to meet standard. And so that is one of the advantages of the SBAC that we certainly look at. And this year, we're back to the normal status for taking SBAC. So we will be taking, our 10th graders will be taking it this spring.
So Kevin, you indicated two things, and I'm not asking you to go in depth, but after that exam, when we formatively look at that, those results, we're able to support the student through one of any of the 8 pathways to a meaningful diploma. Is that correct?
Yes, and also help them with course selections when they move forward. We have different college level and dual credit classes that can help kids earn the standard based on where they are with the SBAC. So it does help us with helping the student maneuver through their years in high school.
Thank you. Any
To
more
meet
questions on goal 1, 2?
The career pathways start at the junior year?
No, they start earlier. You can take dual credits earlier. If you pass the SBAC, that meets a pathway score in the 10th grade. We do have AP courses and IB courses that kids can take in the 9th grade year. So there are, it's throughout their years, their high school years.
Paul, I'm sure that you can attest to this, that every year come June, we have families whose student for some reason haven't fulfilled the qualifications. And I know that we've had several reports from our high schools where they literally know where every student is, especially those who are on the border, if you will, and what they're doing with Saturday schools, with class retrieval, getting those kids to graduation. And it was a much greater number in the past. I know now it's not the number that it was, but I know that the schools have a very detailed plan on tracking the students, making sure that those students that are questionable have the interventions that they need and that they are working toward graduation for all students. I think, in fact, we've been rather impressed with the efforts of this counselors, administrators, and teachers to get all the kids through to graduation, fulfilling the requirements as required by the state.
Okay, Brian, do you want to proceed with goal 2?
All right, Tess.
So goal 2 focuses on parent and community engagement. In the spring of 2020, because of COVID-19, we quickly pivoted and held all parent conferences virtually through Teams. As you can see in the plan, there was a slight increase in parent participation. So even when it is safe to hold conferences back in person, we are going to continue to offer virtual conferences as an option to families. And Kevin will speak to student-led conferences.
Student-led conferences were held at all secondary levels. There was a 4% increase to 93% participation at the middle school level, and our high schools maintained at 85%. The key was that all schools followed up with the families who did not attend, and they were conducted by teachers and engagement teams to make sure families were informed about the progress of their student. And Leanna will speak more on community engagement.
Thank you. School, family, and community partnerships and engagement continue to be an important focus for the school district. We have nearly 40 active partnerships, and we're working to strengthen them to support student achievement. Some highlights of this year's partnerships include the mural unveiling in September at Clover Park High School. Key partners for this project include the City of Lakewood, Pierce College, Clover Park Technical College, and the Lakewood Multicultural Coalition. It enabled students to demonstrate collaboration and leadership, which are 2 of the 4 pillars, in the creation and display of the mural, which is titled "The World Lives in Lakewood." It is displayed in Clover Park High School, as I mentioned, and the portable replica can be displayed at community events. And we continue to work more closely with the City of Lakewood. We are a part of the city's Dr. MLK Jr. Committee and Celebration that happens annually. And as part of this, the district has led the annual Hidden Heroes campaign, which highlights leaders in the Black community, both locally and nationally, for their many contributions. The district receives input from students, families, staff, and community members to select the individuals to be highlighted during the celebration. We also hosted a booth at the 25th anniversary to share information, and we did display the multicultural mural, which served as a backdrop for individuals to take photos. We participated in the truck and tractor event and also the city's reverse parade during the holiday season, where we had a decorated school bus. Volunteers, including the Lakes high school cheer team, also participated. And then importantly, we have a new partnership with KBTC to present virtual information nights for families, which include family activities. 2 events this year were Dia de los Muertos in October and the Lunar New Year event in February. And we just recently, as in last week, launched our Parent Academy, which provides virtual presentations on various topics for families. And we're working to provide those presentations in English and Spanish. And themes this year for the presentations include social media, social emotional learning resources, and financial literacy. And now Deputy Superintendent Laba will share more information on Goal 2.
A little more data on the use of school messenger. The number of attendance calls was down for the previous year, as we did not return to on-site instruction until February and March. Attendance was also counted a little bit differently due to remote learning for the first half of the year. More individual outreach calls were made to keep families informed of educational environments for the year and how to remain engaged with the school district. As data regarding Skyward Family Access, there was a decrease in the total number of individual logins from the previous school year. Individual logins does include students, Last year with the change in platform where we were using Microsoft Teams, assignments were posted there, decreasing the need for individual student logins into Skyward. The number of unique family logins, though, increased by 800, which represents more families using Skyward Family Access than the previous school year. Student Services runs the Parent Connection Council meetings. The Parent Connection Council in 1819 met on site in central office. In the 1920 school year, the PCC met on site 3 times and had to cancel the 4th meeting due to the COVID closure. During the 2021 school year, the PCC met 4 times virtually and has met 3 times virtually so far this year. The final meeting for this school year is in April. The number of parents invited to the PCC has increased each year and are making progress on the number, we are making progress on the number of parents attending all 4 meetings. During COVID, the district suspended the use of volunteers. We have recently started accepting volunteers in schools again after implementing the new Raptor volunteer management system. The link for volunteers volunteering in schools is found under Get Involved on the district website. In teaching and learning, they manage the educational effectiveness survey from the, it sounds very redundant now, Center for Educational Effectiveness, or CCC. This is done annually. Both staff and parents increased their positive affirmation responses to the questions posed in the educational effectiveness survey. We did not survey in the spring of 2020 due to the COVID closure. The staff survey is conducted annually in the spring, and typically the parent survey every other year, though this year we have chosen to conduct the parent survey again. The survey is completed electronically for both staff and parents. Questions around goal 2?
I have a number of questions. The Parent Academy just launched. Sounds very intriguing. Could you expand a bit more?
So what that is that is a partnership with a couple of community partners and then our school district student services center. And so we've identified themes, social media, one, because as many may know, we've had an uptick in some concerning social media trends, such as on TikTok and just some other challenges, especially as kids were navigating social media during the COVID pandemic and virtual and hybrid learning. So we knew that was an area of focus that we wanted to partner up with families to provide them with resources. Additionally, with financial literacy, and that's a partnership with Twin Star, and then with our social emotional learning resources, and tying that in with curriculum so that we can provide resources to support families at home. And so it just launched where we have presentations scheduled through the end of the year, and we can provide that information to you. And we're providing information to schools to share with their families, and then of course sharing it through district communication channels. But it's truly resources to support families in supporting their kids. And these presentations are done separately. So a presentation would be conducted in English, and then it would be conducted separately in Spanish.
Last August, I saw in the Suburban Times first part of the year and presented to the city council in their report. There was a group of students, 50 of them, I think, from Clover Park High School, who I think it was called the Warrior Project. It seems to me that would be a good addition to this report on student achievement, because, well, for one, I'd like to see that report. I know they made a presentation to the city council, but I think they were paid $500 each as a student, and they participated in any number of research projects. So that's all I know, but I'd like to know more.
Or that we have to go through Ron to get information. question?
Brian, do you want to proceed with the next goal?
All right, goal 3, Kevin.
Goal 3 is a focus on communication with stakeholders. This involves not only our students, staff, families, but also our community within Lakewood and beyond. Districts and school websites, newsletters, school messenger announcements, and use of social media help to broaden our reach to the community. Our district parent community council engages our families across the district. Student voice groups within the schools and building PTA and booster clubs create communication within each school, as well as yearly surveys. Our JB Allen partnership has allowed us to support the military families on base and in the school. And now Leanna will speak to more community relations.
The district will run its community perception survey, which is a telephone survey, in the next month or two to gather community input on district performance, which will serve as an important benchmark for district communication and engagement efforts. And we continue to engage our community on social media. We have a steady increase in followers on platforms that our families are more engaged in, and that's on Facebook and Instagram. And we're focusing on reach and engagement. Additionally, we continue to increase our video presence on our YouTube channel. And now that we're over 1,000 subscribers, we have the ability to live stream just as we're doing this evening. My apologies. Over the past 3 years, we've increased our Facebook presence by 57%, and we have more than doubled our Instagram followers. Our focus this year is on providing communication support for our COVID-19 response and recovery as we shift from pandemic to endemic. Focus on communicating about our academics, our social emotional learning resources, and highlighting the extraordinary efforts of our students and our staff. So our communication tools do include the school messenger, phone, email, and text notification system, social media, website, videos, and supporting school communication as well. And now Brian will share additional information on goal 3.
Student Services tracks the number of students entering and exiting the district. Last year, we saw a small increase in the number of students entering the district overall, and a slight decrease on the number of students exiting the district. Student Services was also able to meet 94% of the requests for interpreters in 12 different languages, which is a 1% increase over the previous year. Student Services also last year was able to accommodate 1,200 different individual requests for interpreters. This is a 700 more. This was 700 more requests than the previous year. The requests mainly grew to the increased number of virtual parent-teacher conferences and special education meetings. ITS also tracks the number of visits to our district website, one of the communication strategies that Leanna spoke to. Visits to the district website surpassed our internal goal that we set for ourselves in the 22-23 school year, so a year ahead of time, 2 years ahead of time, and we moved from 3.6 million visits to 4.5 million visits to the district website. Questions about goal 3?
The percentages show that things are improving, but you know, they don't work for me as well. I mean, I like to see improvement, but how many you mentioned on the videos? You have 1,000 subscribers, so that's a number. The city of Lakewood basically has 60,000 people, so that, you know, so those are people in our community. We have, you know, 12,000 students, so say 2 children per family, that's 6,000. So do we have any numbers there that can tell us that we're hitting most of those people or not those people?
You know, for us, it's about growth. You know, within the accountability plan, YouTube is not one of the metrics that we're measuring. However, we have seen a significant increase in folks who are subscribing to our channel, but really we're focusing on meeting people where they're at and working to engage our families on platforms that they're using. And so I think it's more than just the number, the metric. It's the richness of the engagement and the information that we are sharing. We have substantially increased, especially during COVID, the information that we're sharing and we're posting to our YouTube channel as a resource for our families. If you were to look through, there's many presentations both in English and in Spanish to serve as a resource for families. And we're, as I mentioned, committed to meeting families where they're at. So you're just trying to share our story and engage on the various platforms.
Now, when people make comments, do we go back out and like their comments?
When people make comments on social media?
Yes.
Sometimes. Typically what we do with our responses on social media is we work to provide factual information for families. So we work to clarify if there's misinformation on there. If it's a celebratory post, many, if you've checked out our social media page, every Friday, we have a Promising Future Friday where we celebrate one of the amazing students in our school district. So, periodically we may like a post, especially if a parent makes a comment, we may do that.
Okay. So you can't give me a number then of how many, I know you're talking about richness of what we're doing, but how many people are being enriched or helped?
Can you clarify, please, when you say a number? What do you mean?
Well, how many Twitter followers do we have?
That's in the accountability plan. My apologies, I don't have a dual screen to be able to pull that up at this moment. But if someone, it's posted there of where our current Twitter followers are, as well as Facebook and Instagram.
Twitter, yeah, I can help you. Leanna, I have them in front of me.
Thank you.
Twitter followers are 1,727. Facebook followers are up over 1,000 from 2019 to 2020, actually up 1,500. It went in 2021, we had 7,611. And today it looks like we have 8,099. And Instagram followers, last year we had 1,238, and this year we're at 1,441.
Thank you.
So we are seeing growth in all areas.
Is that a question for me? I
No,
didn't hear it.
It wasn't
just
a
a
question. She
statement.
was just a statement saying that we have seen growth in all of our platforms.
Well, yeah, that's what the percentages show. I was just I was interested in the numbers. Thank you.
I can provide historical numbers if needed.
They're in here.
Okay, thank you.
The questions?
I just have a comment. Leanna, I just want to thank you and your team. Communication was one of the problems that I had when I first joined the board. And I have seen such a growth from the last 4 years, and the engagement and the different languages, English and Spanish, and many of the posts that we make on especially Facebook. I just really appreciate what your team is doing, and there has been such a growth from 4 years ago.
Thank you.
I should have mentioned this in goal 2, which was parent and community engagement. And I realize we're now with communication with stakeholders. But I just wondered if we could backtrack just for a bit. Military, they adopt schools, correct?
That is something that the military has done.
I just think that is an excellent program, and I know what communities and schools have done as far as partnering with the school district to provide mentoring, which is absolutely critical. Single parent moms, for example, in our community of Telecom is a high number. So mentoring military adoption of schools, making the school the hub of the community where paid for by us taxpayers, it becomes open for all manner of activities, including my love, which is Telecom Crusher baseball. I realize not we can't adopt all programs, but as far as community relations go and parent community engagement, I've not seen a better model for galvanizing an entire community around their kids playing sports. Taj Jensen was the prior principal at Telecom Elementary School. And that's his statement, that he believes that sports provide an opportunity in addition to academics that almost no other vehicle can, by which to produce character. So I just think those partnerships are outstanding.
We did engage with the garrison commander as well as the First Corps commander, General Brunson, around military units adopting, and that was right about the end of Delta. And as soon as, the beginning of Delta, and once that started to increase, the military parameters around volunteers tightened up. And so we are in those conversations, and we believe that that will become more prevalent as COVID subsides. And we are also in conversations, coincidentally, with the Lakewood Baseball Association, Lakewood Baseball Club, to talk about use of fields around the agreement that we have with the Lakewood City of Lakewood Parks and Rec. And so we are definitely exploring different options there.
And I just want to say from personal experience, when we walk into a classroom with the permission of the principal, for example, as coaches, and say how many kids want to play ball, every hand that goes up, they're on the team. If something like that, I know Lakewood Baseball Club would be absolutely supportive of bringing together a community around their kids playing sports. Thank you.
Not seeing anyone else trying to jump in to get a question. We'll proceed with goal 4.
All right, Tess.
Goal 4 focuses on a supportive learning environment for students. Annual attendance rates will be available at the end of the school year. However, like Brian was talking about earlier, we watch our attendance rates closely at each school, and we support principals as they work intentionally with their staff to maintain a supportive learning environment for students. The Teaching and Learning Department offers continual professional development for staff focused on social emotional engagement and academic learning strategies. And this is so that we are maintaining learning environments where students want to come to. Additionally, principals continually also work with their engagement teams to identify individual family barriers to regular attendance, again, like Brian mentioned earlier, as well as to identify resources that can help overcome those barriers. District-wide, we have a social emotional block at the elementary level and an advisory block at the secondary level, which are built into the master schedule. And these allow students to intentionally build relationships with each other and with staff. Curriculums used during those blocks are Second Step at the elementary and middle levels and Character Strong at the high school level. And as mentioned earlier, we work with our community partnerships, just a few like Greater Lakes Counseling and JBLM support, such as the Military Family Life Counselors and School Behavior Health Counselors. And I'll now pass it to Kevin.
I'll report on discipline. Discipline in 2020, 2021, we had no long-term exclusions and we had 25 short-term exclusions through our K-12 schools. This is a reflection of students being virtual most of the year and then moving to a hybrid model towards the end. Although we don't have a full discipline data breakout for this year, we can make comparisons of mid-year rates to years past. There's a positive trend in the decline of discipline. At the end of January this year, we had 333 exclusionary incidences. If we double that and estimate the trend for the end of the year, we could be at 665 incidences. This is well under the 2018-19 year of 1,892 exclusionary incidences and 2019-20 of 1,214 exclusionary incidences. Our approach to exclusionary practice is guided by the state, and our goal is to keep students in the learning environment. The use of restorative practices and using multiple interventions prior to any exclusionary practice has helped mold behavior to focus on academic learning. And now I'll pass it to Brian.
Thank you. As mentioned before, we contract with Center for Educational Effectiveness to conduct an annual longitudinal survey for staff and families. You notice in this chart, it says not surveyed this year. And of course, that's the 1920 school year where we left in March due to COVID, and then surveyed every other year, which has been the plan for staff. And I said earlier, for parents, sorry, that we would survey them every other year. In this case, we are going to also survey parents this spring. In this chart, you can see both staff and parent perceptions improved in the positive affirmations to the questions posed in the survey from the 18-19 administration of the survey. Like I said before, we did not survey staff in the spring of 2020 due to the COVID closure. In the spring of 2021 administration, we selected a different question. So our school community engages in difficult conversations about race, gender, and oppression, discrimination. The previous question we were using was dropped from the survey by Center for Educational Effectiveness. So we chose a different question to monitor. That question will be in the 21-22 administration of the survey. We will survey staff, students, and parents this spring. In the accountability plan is also healthy use survey data, but as we had the COVID closures last school year, which was the year it was supposed to be administered, it was postponed to this fall. So we do not have any data yet from the healthy use survey that was conducted this fall. We should be able to get that data this spring and be able to report on it later in the school year.
Move on. I think it's important to note that when you look at this page, I think this is a celebration, even though the 2021 year, everything was not normal, as we all know, but every category there's an improvement. Every category, in fact, the smallest improvement is 6%. Some of them are over 12%. And I think that is, I don't think we've ever seen those surveys have a consistent positive increase in every single category. So I just think I want to stop and make that note. It's important to realize, nothing is the same, but I'm assuming that things will continue because I know the outreach, what I've heard is the outreach from the district, even if kids were at home with their parents and school was not what it was, they really appreciated all the outreaches that they received. So I just want to comment. I don't want that going by that. Every category is an improvement.
Yes, and these two questions for staff have been in the survey for as long as I can remember, which is a long time. And these three questions down here for parents have been in the survey for as long as I can remember as well. And so it is nice to see, like you say, Carol, improvement, significant improvement from the 18-19 year to the 2021, despite all the commotion we had in that school year as well. So hopefully that will follow through in the 21-22 school year as well. In student services and ITES, we also look at attendance and truancy, laws and procedures. Numbers reported reflect the COVID school year for the 2021 school year. Prior to closure in the 1920 school year, we had seen a decline from the 18-19 school year. Student Services continues to work with school administrators on the process of petitions and community engagement boards. Community engagement board meetings, like I said in my first presentation, are comprised by school administrators, counselors, student services representatives, represented from the juvenile court system, along with the family and student. And of course, the goal there is to determine the barriers that keep students from attending regularly. The board then finds community or school-based resources to remove those identified barriers to attending. There have been 4 truancy petitions filed so far this year and 11 engagement boards so far, and then an additional 17 attendance engagement meetings. Attendance meetings are much like community engagement board meetings, like I said before. However, they're not attended by the juvenile court system. This is a lower stakes meeting, again, to look at barriers that are keeping the student from attending regularly. Often, of course, like I mentioned before, these meetings are attendance contracts, or outcomes of those can be attendance contracts between the school, family, and student As Kevin mentioned earlier in his part, exclusionary discipline was significantly lower in the 2021 school year due to being remote. Prior to the closure in the 1920 school year, there was a rise in long-term suspensions from the 1819 school year and a decline in short-term suspensions. Questions regarding goal 4?
I'll remind the board that you do have meals this evening, and we do not have a stop to eat, but more of a working dinner. So feel free to make noise, uncrinkling paper, etc., or not. But just want to let you know we don't have a moment where we stop to just eat. You're welcome to.
I have a question. Yeah, thank you regarding the food. A question regarding the drop significant in long-term and short-term suspensions. Why would that be?
Well, in the 2021 school year, we began school remotely, and we were remote for most of the year. We brought elementary back early in February and then moved to bring secondary kids back in March. So we really weren't in person much last school year. And when we did come back, we were hybrid. So we had about half the number of students per day in a school, and then some students remained remote during that portion of time that we were hybrid. So it's a weird year to look at in terms of discipline, because it's sort of a non-year in terms of discipline.
Additional questions for the team?
I just wanted to say I kind of find it interesting, and also I'm happy to see that the question about my child feels safe at school increased so much from the last survey results, only because, you know, you think of COVID, there was a lot of safety concerns, and then there's kind of a lot of scary things that just are out in the world in general. And so I'm really happy to see that our schools feel like are safe for our students, and they feel that.
All right, I'm going to move to goal 5, and Lori McSay is going to start.
Goal 5, recruitment, retention, and professional development. I'll just start with the teacher turnover rate. Although we won't have final teacher turnover data for this school year until August 31st, I can share with you that the data we collect through our annual intent to return survey conducted with certificated staff in early February indicates that 35 of our certificated staff intend on resigning. Of that 35, 12 are military related, so PCS or permanent change of assignment through the military. The data also indicates that about 15 teachers intend to retire at the end of this school year as well. The Educator Networking Employment event has been very successful for the last few years. It is our own Clover Park School District sponsored event. This year, we modified the event from a networking event to an interview-only event. This virtual event took place on February 23rd. We interviewed 27 certificated applicants at this virtual event. And of those 27 interviewed, 21 applicants have been recommended for hire by the principals that conducted the interviews at that event. As far as other recruitment activities, we scheduled 2 out-of-state events this year, primarily focused on special education. And then as far as college and university events, most of those have been held virtually, a couple in person. And so we've attended those in whatever format that they allowed for. This year we had 1 in person and the rest were virtual events. We are scheduled to attend the statewide teacher recruitment event in person that is held at the Tacoma Dome on March 22nd. As of today, there are 7 candidates in our alternative routes to certification program. Of the 7, we anticipate about half will complete the 2 to 3 year program this year. The rest will return to complete their program in the 2022-2023 school year. As for student teachers, this year we placed 27 student teachers throughout the district. We anticipate all will complete their student teaching experience successfully, and some will be hired as a result. Our principal and program administrator certification program continues to be a success. This year we have 5 interns in the program and anticipate all will complete successfully.
We continue to provide support for our teachers in a number of ways, from national board certification support to professional development. It is important to note we moved from a district developed survey in this educational effective survey section from a district developed survey in 1819 to the educational effectiveness survey in the 2021 school year. So there's no comparison to previous years on these two educational effectiveness questions. We did not survey staff or parents during the spring of the 2021 or the 1920 school year due to the COVID closure. We have moved entirely to a virtual format for our teacher academy from in-person instruction in the 21-22 school year. The data from the 2021 school year shows that we have not grown to the 18-19 previous level of attendees or classes offered, but have made headway over the 19-20 school year. The 19-20 and 2021 school years were impacted by COVID. We also continue to support our new teachers. As Lori mentioned, the number of new teachers coming in through teaching and learning. Data reflects fewer new staff in the 2021 school year. Data for the current school year increased to previous levels. New teachers continue to be mentored by experienced teachers on release through grant funds from our beginning educator funds from OSPI. Any questions about goal 5?
Help me understand on, let's see, page doesn't have a page number on it. Shoot. I guess it does. 56 of our package page, and it has the number of certificated staff resigning. You have several numbers in parentheses. Help me understand what is that supposed to tell me? I didn't understand that.
Director McStay, were you able to hear the question?
Yeah, I'm not looking at what
Oh,
you're
no,
seeing, Paul, so,
I'll back up for you.
okay, thank you.
Oops, one more slide. Oops. He's asking about right here where 114 is the total number of resignations, but 23 of them were retiring, I think is what you're.
Yes, yes. Out of the 114, 23 were retirees.
Okay. And then the 90 is a math error, right? It must be 91.
Well, there are others that are included in those resignations. Those are situations where we do a non-renewal. So somebody might resign in lieu of termination. So we don't add that in.
I really don't understand that now.
Okay, I will get back to you through the superintendent. Other questions?
Looking at the opportunities that we've given our students because we haven't been in person, and the recruiting things from, and then to like teacher academy, is there any conversation, and this might be a little bit below the line, if it is, please let me know, to maybe offer both next year, both virtual and in person, to reach more? Or are we going to go back? We all know, and I believe it's much better to be in person. We do better, and I think we're all looking forward to that. Or are we just kind of in a doing what we need to do to get by type of mode right now.
We will continue to examine
Okay,
practices that we've
okay.
implemented during COVID.
Okay,
And when some of those are feasible to continue because we got better results, or maybe we just casted a wider net and we were able to accommodate more people.
Yep.
And so I don't have a question or an answer for that question at this time, except that the team and I will continue to examine the practices and employ those that we feel would yield the best results.
I truly wouldn't expect an answer really, because the reality is there's everything is moving and it's still very fluid. And we know that COVID has changed how a lot of businesses do business. And I just didn't know if.
Right. It's just
Further
like going back
conversation.
to Executive Director McCartan's comments around conferences.
Yes.
So we will look to try to maximize on a parent's need for the virtual.
Mhm.
So we'll look at options.
Perfect example.
Maybe this is being looked into, but I still have a question regarding the number of certified staff resigning. In parentheses, it looks like the first number applies to those that are retiring in each case. And I'm not sure then what the second number means in each case, 52, 49, and 90.
So that was an explanation that I shared with Paul just a moment ago, and I will share that through the superintendent, because it has to do with some sensitive information regarding resignations in lieu of termination.
Thank you.
Can proceed with goal 6.
All right, Greg Hart and Greg Davis will get review goal 6.
All right, thank you, Brian. You can go to the next slide. So goal 6, fiscal responsibilities. So we'll touch on a few financial highlights here. So bond refunding. Last fall, we refunded or refinanced some of our bonds. This will save the taxpayers nearly $6 million over the life of the bonds. Next, audit. So the state auditor's office audits us every year. Last July, they completed the audit of the 1920 school year. It was a very clean audit and we did not have any findings. Safetynet. So you've likely heard that special education is underfunded by the state. However, there is a process called Safetynet that allows us to apply for additional dollars to help fill the gaps in funding. Last year, we received about $2.6 million in Safetynet funding. This funding helps alleviate the burden on local dollars. Next slide. ESSER. So last year, we received federal emergency relief funding to help offset the cost of the COVID-19 pandemic. We are using these one-time funds for student well-being, student learning recovery, health and safety, technology, and support services. Highlights of how we are spending ESSER dollars include mental health supports like Greater Lakes Counseling Services. We're using it for building supervision, tutoring services, community partnerships such as the YMCA and Boys and Girls Clubs, one-to-one devices for students, recruiting and retaining critical hard-to-fill positions like bus drivers and nurses, and also a robust summer school program. Next slide. So local assessed value growth. So property values in the districts have increased by a value of 16%. This ensures that we can fully collect our levy. It is important to note, though, that we can only collect up to the amount that was approved by the voters. And we cannot collect more than $2.50 per $1,000 of assessed value. State construction funding. We are in the process right now of getting reimbursed for approximately $22.7 million in state construction assistance for Thomas Middle School. This is critical funding that allowed the district to fully fund the project without going to the local voters for bond funding. Also noted is that the project came in under budget by about $3.5 million. Quick note on enrollment. In October, we were about 250 students above our budgeted projection. This is important because enrollment is the primary driver of our funding. So this is a positive thing for our budget. Next slide. Transportation stabilization. So the state is providing transportation funding for the student transportation program. This important funding helps maintain this critical program to get our kids to and from school. Impact aid flexibility. As a reminder, impact aid funding is the funding we get in lieu of the property we cannot tax on JBLM. The funding is based on the population of our military students. The United States Congress recently passed a bill allowing the flexibility to use our 1920 student accounts. This allows us to maintain this important funding. And then a note about facilities. So we do have a strong capital projects fund that helps us address facility needs. We have wrapped up the construction of Thomas Middle School. We also recently completed a facility condition assessment, and this assessment allows us to prioritize and organize facility needs. And that concludes the report. Do we have any questions?
On the ESSER funds, did we have to use any of those funds for fully funding our lunch meals in the Fed? Or was that a Fed?
No,
No.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yes, we did. We did use some funding to help offset the additional costs for feeding those students.
So the waiver from the U.S. Department of Agriculture also allowed us to feed all students as opposed to just those that qualify for free and reduced lunch. Sorry. Great. You want to do a quick break?
Oh. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, now that I want all of the desserts, there is a cookie in your box, but okay, we're gonna go to Superintendent Banner now. He's gonna go through his information for each of the goals, and he's just gonna go right through all of them.
Thank you. I will be moving right through the operational infrastructure evaluation of the superintendent, citing highlights of evidence. And then, of course, I'll be available to you when you go into your executive session, whenever that is, in order to discuss. I will be available that entire time. So the first criteria is personal qualities. I have successfully demonstrated the criteria outlined in personal quality section. This is evidenced by my interactions with both within the district organizations and outside of the district organizations, such as, but not limited to, the Superintendent's Youth Advisory Coalition, addressing staff at various functions, nope, keep going. Cookies will do that to you. No, you're fine.
Oh, way back here. Okay, sorry.
Nope, that's everything that you just heard from the team is a summary of the accountability plan to date. And so I am focusing now this time on the operational infrastructure evaluation of the superintendent. The first criteria being personal qualities. And so this is evidenced by my interactions with both within the district and with organizations outside of the district, such as, but not limited to, the following. Superintendent Youth Advisory Coalition is working with students, addressing staff at various functions, fireside chats, administrative leadership team, superintendent's council, and video messages, both to staff and to the public. Community meetings, Lakewood Promise Board, Lakewood Multicultural Coalition Board, Lakewood YMCA Advisory Board, monthly meetings with the city manager, quarterly meetings with the JBLM Garrison Commander, and meetings as scheduled with the Lakewood Police Department, whether that be the chief, the assistant chief, in some cases, the sergeant who covers our SROs. State of the district and COVID updates have been given at Lakewood United, Clover Park Rotary, Kiwanis, which is tomorrow afternoon, and Lakewood Rotary, which is ongoing meetings, as I'm a member there, and we've scheduled a June meeting for the state of the district. With regard to relationships with the superintendent, you can see the 5 criteria there. I continue to keep the board informed in a timely manner of relevant events and facts. This is done through weekly board briefs, special briefings as needed, individual inquiries as appropriate, reports to the board at regular or workshop meetings, executive sessions, and special meetings as needed. Keeping in mind that all of those meetings or briefs are not always me giving the briefs, but it's me leading my team, and my team is going to give them. When there are questions with respect to policy and procedure, I have presented my perspective and supported it with policy and/or statutory language. I also seek guidance from the Washington State School Directors Association and/or legal counsel when appropriate. I continue to look to the one voice of the board to support my work and action steps, both as the secretary to the board and as the superintendent/CEO of the school district. It is important for the board to engage in discourse so that the one voice can emerge and give direction to the superintendent. With regard to policy development, at the direction of the board during the June 2019 workshop, you can see in here the minutes should be in your packet, and at the January 2021 workshop, I initiated a process for policy development specifically to equity and inclusion. This policy development process culminated in a revision of the then current policy 1109 equity and excellence to the now revised and current policy 1109 equity and inclusion. At my direction, the district monitors WASDA policy news and ongoing legislative developments that impact policies and presents updates, revisions, and additions to the board for consideration of adoption through the first and second reading process. With regard to parent and community relationships, communication and visibility with parents and community is regular in a variety of venues to include inside schools publications, video messaging, social media, and our district website. Physical presence at public events has been limited to ongoing and changing Department of Health COVID-19 guidelines. When possible, physical appearances and communication have occurred at, like previously mentioned, Lakewood United, Clover Park Rotary, Garrison Command meetings. All agencies and service groups have set their own meeting schedules with respect to in-person or virtual meetings, as they have moved the dial as they have seen fit based on the current COVID-19 guidance or the guidance at the time. Virtual meetings, as directed by the superintendent, have taken place to communicate with students and families, such as COVID updates, parent conferences, parent academy events, Parent Connections Council, Superintendent Youth Advisory Coalition, our Pearson K-5 and Graduation Alliance orientation meetings. I attend regular and ongoing engagements at the local, state, and federal level to advocate for the students, staff, and families of the district on a variety of topics. Local level representation, regular meetings with our union and employee association leadership. Again, monthly city manager meetings. Scheduled meetings with the South Sound Military Community Partnership. Quarterly meetings with the Garrison Command. Intermittent meetings and events at the invitation of the First Corps Commanding General. Weekly meetings with Pierce County superintendents. Monthly Lakewood Promise Board meetings. Scheduled Lakewood YMCA Advisory Board meetings, and monthly Lakewood Multicultural Coalition Board meetings. Other meetings that have been as scheduled or on a scheduled basis have been with the Clover Park Technical College President, the Pierce College President and Chancellor, and again, the service groups as listed here. State and regional level representation have occurred at weekly and monthly Puget Sound Educational Service District Superintendent meetings, intermittent meetings, and scheduled advocacy meetings with the 28th and 29th District legislators. And federal representation has occurred through tours and other scheduled meetings with the 10th District's Representative Marilyn Strickland, the annual Fall and Spring National Association of Federally Impacted Schools Conference, there to advocate in Washington, D.C. for the impact aid funding on behalf of the district, with the Washington State's representatives and senators. And also quarterly meetings with the Military Impacted Schools Association, of which we are a member. Staff and personnel relationships. During COVID, it has been extremely important to balance staff well-being with the urgency of moving the district forward in all aspects of our work. The impact of COVID on the staff has been as hard as it has been on our students and families. I have addressed our leadership team in a manner that models what I have asked them to do with the staff that they lead. The direction has been to do the best that we can with what we have and what we know on any given day, with the expectation that that sentiment be modeled and passed along the line of support. For example, from our council level to our building and department leaders, to the staff that they support, our educational staff, and to students and families. That said, I've made decisions that have supported staff while at the same time impacting the daily schedules and duties of other staff, such as the following responses to the shortage of substitute teachers. Reassigning district administrators to substitute 1 day per week to cover unfilled teacher absences. Entering into an MOU with the Clover Park Education Association that reassigned consultant teachers to substitute 1 day per week to cover unfilled teacher absences. Reassigning interventionists to substitute in their current work sites, covering unfilled teacher absences. Pausing non-urgent district committee meetings during the Omicron surge to provide relief to staff who have been overly impacted by constantly covering unfilled teacher absences. Providing some late start Wednesday mornings for staff to use as individual planning time to make up for lost planning time, again, due to covering unfilled teacher absences. And while these decisions to reassign staff have caused some discomfort, the positive impact is that a majority of staff were able to get some element of relief from having to use their planning time to cover unfilled teacher absences. Educational leadership, excuse me. The educational leadership of the district is monitored and supported by the instructional leadership team, which meets weekly to monitor, adjust, and support all aspects of instruction throughout the district. The vision for educating our students is clearly outlined in the district improvement plan, school annual action plans, department plans and initiatives, and these are all aligned to the board's accountability plan for the superintendent. The district's focus on instructional practices has been evidenced through the ongoing commitment to the following: our Academic Improvement Committee, District Instructional Strategies Committee, District Math Committee, District Literacy Committee, and District Science Committee. The district's focus on supporting instructional practices has been evidenced through an ongoing commitment to the following professional development and planning opportunities: district teacher academies, late start professional learning communities, district training through the district-centered responsibility stipend days, beginning educator support team, providing mentorship and cohort collaboration for first through third year teachers, consultant teachers, providing mentorship for teachers and departments or grade levels, and National Board Teacher Certification Program, providing cohort and collaboration and mentorship for teachers. This year, each school has been given direction to implement systems that focus on the work of their annual action plans on comprehensive improvement. These systems are equity teams, instructional leadership teams, and their site council teams. Evidence of the instructional leadership within the district can be seen in the following graduation rates. As you heard earlier, prior to me becoming the superintendent, the district graduation rates dropped 9%. In my first year, there was a recovery back up to 88%. And in my second year, we maintained the 88%. The district has focused on overcoming the lack of in-person instruction to provide the highest possible instruction during the pandemic, supporting multiple pathways to graduation and ensuring that challenges like negative transfers do not negatively impact our graduation data. Interim assessments, the following data retrieval systems are functional and will be used as formative assessments in supporting instructional practices and tracking student growth. As you heard earlier, our interim assessment blocks, fall SBA scores, and you heard that they were supposed to be spring of 2021 scores. They were delayed until the fall of 2021. And our STAR interim assessment interim assessments for reading and math K through 5. While maintaining a strong focus on instructional leadership, it cannot go unspoken that the reality of navigating the daily challenges of COVID and maintaining high levels of educational leadership have been a significant challenge. Multiple days per week, district and building administrators are taken away from their primary focus as instructional leaders and diverted to the focus on COVID-19 contact tracing and investigation tasks for what frequently ends up being their entire workday. These leaders still endeavor to meet the needs of their staff, students, and families by working into their personal evening time. With regard to business and finance, as you heard, I'll read through some of these, but the tail end of this report of my document is exactly what Director Hart reviewed with you. So I work with my council regularly to support positive fiscal stewardship. With the Assistant Superintendent for Business Services and Capital Projects and the Director of Finance, we proactively monitor all sources of revenue and expenditures. We lobby for impact aid at the federal level. We're planning development and monitoring for the ESSER funding budget. And as he stated, our annual state audit resulted in 0 findings. With the Deputy Superintendent, we seek federal ARPA, that's American Rescue Plan Act, ECF funding, as you've seen in several resolutions, to supplement the district's instructional technology and connectivity needs. We utilize DODEA, Department of Defense Education Activity funding to support instruction and enrichment opportunities for students. We monitor and manage the district categorical funding. We monitor and manage the state I-grant funding, and we monitor and manage the special education safety net reimbursement. Our Human Resources Department has bargained 2 contracts this year successfully, with another to come in the spring. And we've done that staying within the board parameters and keeping our staff as in the top third of comparable districts with regard to their pay and benefits. With all other departments, I proactively monitor with those department leaders their budgets to make decisions and adjust in a fiscally conservative manner. And aside from the rest of that document, which Director Hart already went over, that concludes between this document and what you just heard with regard to the accountability plan. We would submit that to the board for the superintendent's evaluation when you take that up.
Ron, I just want to tell you how much I personally appreciate you. You became the superintendent and quickly COVID hit, and you've been working your way through it for the past 2 years. And I distinctly remember calling you one day and you said, sorry, I can't talk right now. I have to go I have to be a sub. And in that moment, I thought, wow, first of all, our superintendent is a substitute teacher right now. But second off, you never made excuses for the teacher shortage and substitute shortage. You just did what you had to do to get it done. And, we didn't say, go substitute in the classroom. You made it work. You made sure that the students were being taught. And I really appreciate that.
I guess I would just say that in true leadership, we just do what we can do. There are realities and we try not to make them excuses. But if we don't face the realities, then we're not making the right decisions to address those realities. And again, I would just say in true leadership, that team that's up on the board right there, they make it happen. So thank you.
Turn it over to you, Carolyn Anthony, for the next steps on the evaluation.
As we move forward with our next steps, what we need to do now is we need to complete this evaluation. And if you want to do it tonight, we can take it and have it collated or compulated, or if you want, it should be turned into Carmen no later than Thursday. Would that work for you, Carmen, or do you need Wednesday? Well, I would suggest that we've got this here and that we take a hard copy and we turn that to Carmen as a hard copy. And then we will take those comment. We will take those things, the results, put them together. Next Monday, we will meet in executive session to go over the results, to collate all the comments, the findings, and then have a conversation with our next steps of contract. Any questions?
Okay.
If you want to do it tonight, I'll sit and wait and take it with me tonight if you'd like.
Where this kind of came from too is we've done this a lot of different ways, at least the past 4 years that I've been on the board. And it seemed when we did executive session the same night that it was given, there wasn't time to compile the results. So then we were spending most of the time in executive session saying, what's your number? What's your number? Throwing out the high one, throwing out the low, it just took most of the time was taken putting the results together rather than actually discussing where we were going.
But we will have a chance to discuss
Yes.
in executive session some of the decisions that we've made and some of the comments that we feel we want to put forward. Please keep in mind, one thing that's important is that this is the evaluation from last year. This is not the evaluation. We don't talk about what's the next steps, because that is not evaluation, that's a plan. So we just stay with just facts.
Deputy Superintendent Laba, would you proceed with our presentation on discipline?
Right, will do. All right, thank you, Board President and board members, to provide another opportunity to do a deeper dive into discipline data from this school year. This is a follow-up to the January board workshop where I provided the background and change in state discipline law and policy in 2018. As a reminder, in 2016, the state legislature passed House Bill 1541, noting that exclusionary discipline was associated with negative school climate and disconnection to school. The legislation also recognized that exclusionary discipline had a strong correlation with reduced graduation rates, increased involvement in the juvenile justice system. The legislation further noted that throughout Washington, students of color and students with disabilities experience disproportionate rates of exclusionary discipline. Two other components of the legislation included provisions for families to participate in the discipline process, and when students are excluded, that they receive educational services during their suspension or expulsion. OSPI adopted the final student discipline rules on July 30, 2018. The new rules were phased in over 2 school years, the 2018-19 and the 2019-20 school years. As the new rules were being written and finalized, there was a district committee that reviewed the new policies and rewrote the district guidelines and procedures. The committee was comprised of district and school administrators and representatives from the teacher collective bargaining group. The committee worked with consultants from OSPI to understand the rules and to examine district data. Professional development was provided in the 18-19 and 19-20 school years, and again in the 21-22 school year. Again, this was a slide from the January presentation, the why behind OSPI spent time on revising the administrative code on discipline. In this slide, I just want to review some terms that are used throughout the presentation, one of which is documentation. Teachers have been asked to document other forms of discipline they have taken prior to submitting an office discipline referral. Often these include talked with student individually, called family and discussed and/or met with family and student. Administrators review documentation referrals and determine if intervention is needed, as an administrator talking to the student or bringing in the counselor. There is also a term called incidents. These actually equal office discipline referrals. Teachers submit office discipline referrals to their administrators that describe the behavior violation, when and where it took place, and other forms of discipline they attempted. In addition, teachers input that they have made or have attempted contact with the family. Another term that's often used in this presentation is actions, which equal what the administrator's actually done with that office discipline referral, which could be a student conference, in-school suspension, or assigning short and long-term suspension or expulsion. Administrators use the office discipline referrals, meeting with the student and family, determine the level of action, other forms of discipline, length of time in or out of school, and the behavior violation coding. Unless a student's ongoing behavior poses an immediate and continuing danger to others, or a student's ongoing behavior poses an immediate and continuing threat to the educational process, teachers must first attempt one or more other forms of discipline to support students in meeting behavioral expectations before imposing classroom exclusion, or short-term suspension, or in-school suspension. Before imposing short-term or long-term suspension or expulsion, administrators must as well first consider other forms of discipline. So in the next couple slides, or several slides, I'm going to show slides from our data dashboard, Who Knew It. Who Knew It is available to all our school administrators to access and review discipline data, and as well as attendance at their school. It collects data from Skyward and puts it into various displays for analysis. Comparison goes back in terms of like this slide to 2012-13 school year. This data is the number of incidents recorded by behavioral violation. So if it was the behavioral violation was alcohol or assault or harassment, intimidation, bullying, firearm, profanity, and vandalism. The next 4 slides is data taken from Who Knew It on February 22nd. In this chart, you can see the start of documentation referrals. We had a very small start in 17-18, but really the beginning of documentation referrals happened in the 18-19 school year. And then you can see them over the across the years there. Again, additional behavior violations going on this chart. Here's some more incident behavior violation data as collected across the years. On this slide, you see office discipline referrals. Teachers cannot code to discipline action or the type of behavioral violation. They can say what took place, where it took place, what time it took place, what they did to stop it, but they can't actually call it by action. Administrator takes these referrals and codes the type of violation. Some violations are entered by the administrator and do not come from a referral. This is it's a very long data chart in Who Knew It, but you can see at the sum totals at the bottom of the chart here talk about the number of incidents. But I noticed when I looked at this is that we had some peak years in 2016-17, 17-18, and 18-19, as well as 2019-20. We saw a rise in incidents and actions taken over those years. But you notice over here, total number 7,785 as of February 22nd. Here's another way to display the same data. Documentation referrals make up the largest share of this year's data so far. Documentation referrals are just that, information provided by the classroom teacher, the steps that they've taken with the student in the classroom. However, they're not asking the administrator to take an action on this referral. This documents the other forms of discipline they've used, such as speaking to the student individually or speaking with the student's parent. Documentation was emphasized at the beginning of the 1920 school year with implementation of the new state laws regarding discipline procedures. You can see the rise in number from 1,375 or 76 in the 18-19 school year to 9,838 in the 19-20 school year. Of course, 2021 was our remote year for COVID and hybrid in the spring, so very few referrals being made or incidents being reported in the 2021 school year. And here you see the 21-22 school year 4,300 documentation referrals so far this year. If you compare between 3 years of incidents, so 18-19, 19-20, and then the 21-22 school year, you'll notice a decline in the number of serious incidents, dropping from 2164 to 911 to 496 this school year. Office discipline referrals remain relatively flat at 1536, 1697, and 1557. And this chart displays the disciplinary action taken by the administrator from using an adjusted program, which is really a way of saying shortened school day, for example, to making a telephone call to the family or written communication with the family or guardian. In the 18-19 school year, there was a total of 16,277 actions taken. So far this school year, there has been 7,626 actions. With the change in state law, the use of emergency expulsion was curtailed. Just wanted to point that out. Is why you see there's a significant drop in the number of emergency expulsions. New to the 2021 school year, which was set to begin in the 1920 school year, is classroom exclusions. Another reason why there's no data in these columns right here is that classroom exclusions are now being recorded in Skyward. These are not out of school suspensions. They occur when a teacher sends a student out of class for not meeting a behavior expectation. In this chart, you can look at the number of incidents by month. If you take out the 2021 school year, which is the orange line at the very bottom of the graph, you can see by month the numbers are down in the 21-22 school year, which is represented by the green line, compared to the 1920 school year, which is indicated in blue. The blue line dropped significantly in March, and we all know what happened on March 16th. School closed due to COVID, and so you saw a drop in the number of referrals heading into that closure due to COVID. This data also includes all the documentation referrals as well. In February of 1920, so if we go back to this blue dot right here, that represents 2,967 referrals. In 21-22, which is this green dot here, there were 1,154 referrals, which represents a 60% drop in overall incidents. If you look at this slide, this looks by school. This is data from my poll on February 22nd. Clover Park, if you look at this number right here, this 1,170 incidents, 854 of those are marked as documentation. Roughly 73% of this number here is documentation. Remember, documentation does not require action by the school administrator and is not considered out of school or in school suspension. The next highest count for Clover Park is behavior, which generally comes from the classroom, with 118 incidents total. 55 were from 9th grade students, 39 from 10th grade students, 13 from 11th graders, and 11 in 12th grade. Notice the decline over the 4 years. It is up to the administrator then to code the referrals to behavior violation when they take action. If you look at Lakes here, of their 508 incidents in Skyward right now, 241 of them are marked as documentation, or roughly 50%. The next highest version for Lakes is office discipline referrals. Again, it's up to the administrator to code the referrals when they take action. If we look at the top 10 discipline reasons by incident count, again, we keep pointing out documentation is the winner here by several miles, 4,300 documentation. Again, office discipline referrals are really just saying teacher has made a referral to the administrator, and then we have behavior referrals as well. And then you can see how some of them get coded here in terms of action taken by the administrator. Again, this was on February 22nd. I took the poll of data. Here is the top 10 locations is another way to look at how your school is operating, where the discipline actions are taking place or the behavior violations are taking place. Here, the majority are coming. Remember, this number also includes documentation referrals. So this majority of the incidents are occurring in the classroom, followed by hallway. We do take in bus referrals, so the bus drivers put in referrals as well to administrators. Administrators take action on those as well and code those. We see playground, typically elementary school, and you can see down the way where they occur. Then we can also look in this platform as well by race. Again, this data includes all of the documentation referrals, but you can see that the number of incidents by count start with Hispanics, then whites, 2 or more races, Black, African American, and so on. So you can see that in that chart as of February 22nd. So at that point, I'm just stopping here for any board discussion you want to have, questions you might have of me, but we'll leave it there.
It's been a long time since I've been in the classroom, and I just was kind of wondering, can you give me just in simple terms, what does like a documentation, why would a teacher document? What would the student provoke? What would be going on where it would just be a documentation?
Well, they're trying to deal with something relatively low level, like the student talking out of turn, perhaps, maybe getting up out and getting out of their seat and going out of the classroom. We're talking about high schoolers. And so just prevent that from happening in the future, right? They have an individual conversation with that student and talk about, that's how you would leave the classroom is a particular procedure in my room, right? So you don't just get up and go.
Okay.
Remember, these are not about serious events that would disrupt the educational environment, right? They're about minor infractions to the classroom environment.
So it's just basically more of a disruptive student for that moment in that student's life, something's going on and he's just being, or she is just being disruptive in a classroom.
Right. Back to the old days, passing notes. They don't pass notes anymore, but they're on their cell phones passing notes. Those would be an example of breaking an expectation in my classroom that you don't have your cell phone out and you're not communicating with your next door neighbor over the phone. Could be, not getting your work done on time or not doing any work at all in class.
The other comment, there may be more, but I want to give the other board members something to say. I know it's been, I remember, but we used to have discipline hearings often where the student disagreed with that finding and they would come to the school board. And what's happening in the schools is making it so that we haven't had a discipline hearing. I almost can't remember how long it's been. So to me, that's a sign that the discipline implementing that's going on in school to keep kids in the classroom must be working, because they're not coming to us asking for a pardon or for the discipline hearing to be set aside. And it's been years. We used to have probably 4 or 5 a year at least. We haven't had one in probably 3 or 4 years that I know of, if not more. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that the trickle down of taking care of the student at the time and doing what needs to be done is, I think, really helpful with that.
Well, I'm just hoping you don't jinx us here. But what I would respond, Carol, is go back to my days as a principal at Mann Middle School and doing my orientation with parents and really laying out a lot of detailed little things. And I had a parent raise her hand and she said, why do you bother with all the little stuff? And my response was, ma'am, if we take care of the little things, we tend to prevent some of the bigger things. And so when you see a teacher who is willing to work with a student on the little things in class, even when that starts to escalate, there's credibility, relationship that's developed. So, and I'm not saying it's in every case by any means, but I do know that when we address the little things and we build relationship on those little things, when it comes time to extract for something that's a big thing, you don't end up with that, or you get a reality of, yeah, I did mess up. And now it's time to do whatever, is next in line there.
When the parent, not the parent, when the teacher has the opportunity favorable to work individually with that student, whatever the infraction was, and it's a documentation, is that somehow communicated to the parent, like through the parent-teacher conference?
Yeah, they could do that. Sometimes it kind of depends on the age level, right? That's probably very typical in elementary, a little less typical in middle school. In high school, probably what they tend to want to do is try to work it out with the individual student, right? And make sure the student, as they, getting older, becoming closer to becoming an adult, can manage their behavior themselves without the aid of their parent, right? So, it kind of lowers that. But I think at some points, the teachers are calling home to say, hey, I've worked with your student a couple times, but I'm still not getting what I want to have happen. Can you assist me with that, with your son or daughter?
There's value to not calling home on every incident. And then when you do have to call home, there's value to sharing. I did give him or her a few different opportunities to change the behavior and it's not happening. So no, I'm trying to enlist your support, parent. So there's value to both. And like Brian said, usually when the younger ages, you may call more frequently. And again, it's the severity of the infraction as well.
The graph, the vertical columns of the several different colors, I was wondering, it might be more helpful for me, certainly as a board member, to have broad categories like violence, assault, fighting, threats, and harassment for one, disruption, non-cooperation, exceptionally bad behavior for two, alcohol, drugs, and marijuana for three, and then put everything else in an all other category so that we can begin to track trends of major categories of disruption.
So that's that slide that you're referring to, the one with the that's a stack of incidents, is all in those four. Well, there's actually 5 total slides. So if you start with the slide that says who knew it, you go to alcohol, you can see that so far this year there are 10 incidents for alcohol. So it does show you, so if you just keep going along, you'll see alcohol on that page, cooperation with school staff, for example. Then you go to the next one, you'll see electronics, HIB based on disability, HIB based on gender. Then the next one, so it represents all of that data that has been in the previous chart.
Thank you. And then top 10 schools by incident count, I think you said, but I forgot or didn't hear. What year is that for?
That's for this, currently for this school year. So I pulled it for everything up to date of February 22nd for this school year only.
And Brian, you did say that those include the document.
And those include documentation. So remember, documentation is a very, like at Clover Park High School, right? Documentation represents 73% of that number.
Through information that we obtained from the district, I noticed some trends. And they're probably on this chart too, but for example, in assault, Clover Park High School is on a pace to record 20 assaults, more than any of the last 5 years. Disruptive behavior, likewise, to exceed such incident totals of the last 5 years. Exceptional misconduct is also a trend upwards. Fighting without injury. Again, Clover Park High School is on a pace to more than double the number of fights than any of the last 5 years. Lakes in this category will meet or exceed fights without injury for each of the last 5 years. Marijuana, as well as illegal drugs at Lakes High School, is on a pace to exceed any of the past 5 years. And tobacco incidents just halfway through the school year exceed in just 5 months the total incidents for the entire school years for the last 10 years. So there are concerning trends, it appears to me, in assault, exceptional misconduct, fighting without injury, marijuana, and tobacco that need to be called to our attention.
I'll just have a comment on that. And I don't know if there's a correlation, but this is a guess of mine, not an excuse, just a guess. If you see the trends on the news and how adults are behaving and the road rage incidents and people getting run over in the Jack in the Box drive-through, it seems like society is getting more angry as a whole. You know, you see news, I'm appalled by things that I read on the news on a daily basis. The things I read on the internet, it seems like people are getting angry and angrier. And there's been multiple reports over at COVID. People are at their breaking points, they're boiling over, they're lashing out. Students were at home. You know, I have a hard time believing that there's not a correlation between COVID and all the social and emotional things that our students have been through the past 2 years. It's not a good reason, in my opinion, but you know, when you look at how adults are behaving, and the trend going up, it seems like kind of logically makes sense that our students' behavior is also trending in that way. And then it's our responsibility as a district to support our students, help them get back to a good place and a more stable emotional place as well. Because that behavior is not acceptable, quite frankly, and adults too.
Some of the things that we're definitely tracking are maturity levels, whereas we have 9th graders this year who left school midway through their 6th grade year. We have 6th graders who, you know, you can do the math and, you know, just kind of trail it backwards. So a lot of students have missed the opportunity to just, in terms of natural maturation. Now I'm not associating that with any one of the categories, but I know that the maturity levels is something that we're tracking and working with. One of the reasons why we brought mental health into each school, using ESSER funds to triple our Greater Lakes mental health support in schools. And we're going to have to look at that because, quite frankly, the ESSER funds have a cliff, right? They'll be gone in a year and a half. And so we will have to look at that. We're also, you know, I just spoke to the maturity, the mental health of our students, the things that some children have said, because it's been okay to blab that to a screen where there's no connection. There's not even an understanding of how am I impacting this person, this human being, because, you know, and so, you know, we have kindergartners who never, you know, 2nd graders who never made it through their kindergarten school year. So we are constantly analyzing and working, sometimes looking for answers and then just analyzing to hear the data, to look at, you know, what's the function of the behavior and then how do we support that? And we're doing all of that at the same time that we're trying to teach. And that's a reality, and that doesn't go away. I mean, a few years back, the board brought in Jamie Vollmer, which was, you know, the schools can't do it alone. And just that long list of things since the inception of public school that has grown. And as he puts it, yet not 1 minute's been added to the school day, right? And so we accept those things because they're realities, and we continue to work with them. The data that we're looking at, we look at, and we being the teams that work with elementary and secondary schools, or the leaders that do, go out and have those conversations, and we look for best practices. And sometimes we're experimenting. We think this might work. We look to our YMCA partners. We look to our communities and schools partners to see how they can support and supplement. But it is an ongoing task.
You know, as I've gone through these, and I really appreciate all the data here as far as incident breaking down by incident. I personally don't see any, no, there's one on Lude, professor language, which is high. It's the only one that's higher than previous years. Everything else is reduced. And as you were just mentioning, marijuana, it's gone from 64, 56, 50, 67, 80, 83, 46 to 32. So it seems to me like every incident that we're asking for, it actually has gone down. And when you look at the graph, I was trying to do the math real quick, but we were going, the correlation to the month number of misconducts. Again, not one month is higher. In fact, some of them are mostly more than 10%. Well, like the last one was down 60%. I think that's real indicative of, I know that our staff has done a lot with the relationship piece, trying to work with students, understanding that they're coming to school angry, they've been gone. You know, quite frankly, I have a second grader who, like Ron said, we have a second grader in our house who didn't do his full kindergarten. And, you know, he has a different experience than his older sister that did that. But when you look at the monthly misconducts, there's not one month here that's even close to the previous years. And I think that's important. I think it's important to recognize that that's a fact that we can't walk away from.
Two comments. First, to segue from what the superintendent said, as a school board, of course, our job one is academic competence. The parallel track, obviously, is discipline that might disrupt that. So that's why we have this before us tonight, discipline part two. And when we see trends, speaking of maturity level, that are in high school, kids that should know better by this point, in those 5 major categories, that to me should be concerning. And then as related to marijuana, if I had the number right, 21, 22, we're 5 months into the year. So 32 incidents currently times 2 the rest of the year would equal 64, which is
About the same.
only 2 years exceed that. And so that's not a good trend. That's not a good pace. And when you pull the numbers for individual schools like Clover Park in those categories, or like Lakes, or like Cutloff, those trends, not before us, but if we had those numbers, which I have before me, indicate those in those 5 categories, the pace that we're on exceeds the years that I mentioned. So while there are concerns that, well, the society in which we live is emblematic of troubles, so our schools are symptomatic of what's happening out there, I don't accept that as a school board member.
I have a question. When were your numbers too? Because you said we're only halfway through the year, but we're more than halfway through the year. So what your numbers that you're pulling off of, what date does that go up till?
Well, these, for example, this is Clover Park High School. We'll just take, how about exceptional misbehavior, fight without injury. 2022, as we currently sit here tonight, there are 54 incidents.
Sorry, my question is to what date does those dates, because you keep saying times 2. So when were those numbers pulled until, because it's not times 2 from this point, because we're at the end of February.
Okay, so March, April, May, June.
That's only 3 months. Yeah.
The trend, however, regardless, is still there. The numbers currently are indicative of what's going to take place as we move forward. So it's just an FYI.
Yeah, I understand that. But to say it's times 2 and we only have 3.5 months left, that's why I just wanted to clarify on is we're past the halfway mark at school.
Thank you for the clarification. 2 months from now, we'll compare notes.
Yeah, sounds good.
So as I look at the data that Brian shared with us today, which is to date, maybe if, well, you got the report last week, so it's a little bit to last week. I see fighting without injury 21-22 at 248 incidents. We've been comparing back to the 18-19 school year because that's when we had a complete school year, which was at 801 incidents. Prior to that, 970. Prior to that, 687. So if we double this 248, we're at about 500 compared to those previous years. And then the only other piece that I would want to just caution, and just because of something that I heard you say, Director Anderson, but I don't know what your intention was there. You talked about high school kids that should know better, and we would want them to know better. And the reality is our high school kids have what we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. They have things that we would want them to know better. I expect that my kids know better, but I can't expect that somebody who's been through trauma, and I'm not making excuses for every single one of the fights or whatever's happened. I just want to make sure that we know that our kids come with baggage that we have to navigate, as opposed to expecting them to know better. We want to evaluate, assess them, and then take them from where they are and then move forward with them from where they are. And like I said, I don't know what the intention was of the statement, but I want us all to know here on the board, my team and our public, to just know that we have kids that we have to take from where they are, whatever they know at that moment, and then teach them. Discipline comes from the root word disciple, which is to teach. And that's really what we want to do, is make sure that there's instruction and learning, not just punitive. And we know that some things get to a point where there are certain consequences.
To continue then, on the football field, there are chalk lines. There are the same on the baseball field, tennis court, and so forth. If you step outside the line, the play ends. And if we are not sympathetic to our students, but at the same time confrontational, you stepped over the line, I'm not sure that we're adequately preparing them for the challenges of life after high school, because if they're pulled over, I'm not sure their excuses or their upbringing or any of that other extenuating circumstances is going to factor into the fact that there are consequences.
I agree.
Compassion.
No, I agree with you 100%. I would also just add that, since we're going to use sports as an analogy, because I've coached kiddos through Little League, we practice, and the practice gets you to where, yep, you stepped over the line, and then we have game day. And that's why we practice, so that we can keep you in the lines and let you get out as much as you want in practice, but game, right? So we funnel that too. And I think we're saying the same thing. Discipline is the root word disciple, which is to teach. And hopefully we get them to where they don't do that extra speed. But I know my daughter still does, because she got a ticket.
I guess if I had to err on one side or the other, I would say school is game day.
Let's say, I think there are game days and there are practice days.
And I would just say, coming from a family that had very strict rules. I grew up with very strict parents, and every day was game day. Okay, so if we stepped on out, we were stepping right back in. Okay, there was no stepping out. But and that was my expectation for a very long time. I would say up until I joined the board. That is, tell them to do it this way, and they should do it this way. But then I saw my reality is completely different than the majority, than students in the district. Everyone comes from different backgrounds. So I'm not sure, if you don't teach them, if you just sit in the classroom and discipline them and tell them constantly what they're doing wrong, I just worry, I guess, what that would do to them. You have to encourage them and teach them. So I wouldn't say that every day in school is game day. You're teaching them to be productive members of society. So when they graduate, they can go and do that. So I think that that's an unrealistic expectation that every day at school is game day and there's not room for stepping outside of the line or errors to learn to be better.
When your actions have consequences, and when do you learn that? Yeah, throughout life. And so as Director Anderson has just mentioned, you know, it's game day. Every day is game day. It is. Every day is game day. And so if we're not helping people do that, I mean, I've got grandchildren, you know, when there's something dangerous, Nana or I make sure that they don't do it. And so there are methods of conduct that all of us have to learn. And, you know, raising my two children, we had rules, and they learned to follow them, and there was consequence when they didn't. And so that's what has to happen. If you don't do that, it just gets out of control. But anyhow, that's enough on that subject. I'm still going back to this one where they something happened and they got some kind of the teacher writes a report and it's documented, or this documentation thing. That's getting to be a big number. The problem is what's hiding in there. That's what's confusing to me. I mean, something happened that caused a person in authority to say, this isn't right. And that number is so big now, I don't have enough vernier scale to look at that and say, what the heck's happening? And so I think there should be at least some label on there, what the behavior was that caused them to document something. And then that information ought to be broken out so you can say, oh, these are the kinds of things that are happening. Then it may be helpful for that teacher. And, you know, it may be a teacher problem. Maybe, you know, the way they're interpreting the rules or interpreting the behaviors. And if it isn't, then you've got children that are causing issues in the class that are taking, man, these are big numbers compared to everything else. Something ought to be done, at least from my perspective. And, you know, my 70 plus years of life dealing with discipline in the Marine Corps, discipline as a business owner. If you don't deal with it, it just gets worse. And that's my concern as I see all of this stuff. So we have to have rules. We have to let people know what they are, and there need to be a consequence when you don't follow them.
All right. My kids aren't currently in school, but my sisters had kids in school and they do a lot of the documenting as well. And I will say some of the things that the teachers are required to document are quite silly. I've seen them myself, not in the school, the Clover Park School District, but you know, when you're like, the question has been raised, are parents notified every time? Quite frankly, some parents kind of get annoyed by the documentation that sometimes come home. Oh, this, you know, ate when they aren't supposed to eat, poked a kid in the arm. And it's like, not every, I would caution that every single action requires discipline, because if they're being disciplined, are they not in the classroom? Are they not learning? Or can the teacher just say, okay, I document that you poked the student, don't do that, we don't poke our friends, and you continue on in the day? Does that warrant formal discipline?
Make a real quick comment. This is not just don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not emphasizing toe the line all the time. I realize I'm talking about balance. I think the superintendent and I agree. It's not right or left. It's compassion and confrontation, those two balanced.
I was just a question because many of the documentations, I'm sure you would find that many are along those lines of minor offenses that can just be spoken to in the classroom and continue on. So,
Alyssa, I don't think we should walk away from remembering the fact that we have these numbers because the district is concerned about discipline that's going on in school. And if we don't have the numbers, then we can't take what corrective action is necessary. And I mean, like, look at I'm just gonna take elementary school. You've got two little boys. I don't want to be sexist, but acting like little boys, and one's gonna push another little boy, another one's gonna, that could warrant a discipline note. So I mean, it's things that maybe in the past weren't really accounted for that they are now. And like I said, I'm going to go back and look at these numbers even more tonight. But by the very fact that I'm going to say we've got to be doing something right to have 4 pages of documentation where one is just higher than what it has been. And I think that's important to notice when we talk about 3 more months of school. When you look at the monthly percentage of discounts, how that's fallen in this time of unrest, in this time of kids are angry, because I know secondary schools, it's been on the news a lot about the mental health of what secondary students are going through. And they're angry. They don't necessarily want to be in school. They want to be together. So now that they're in school and they got to do this work, they're just not there. And the news has done a pretty good job, I think, of talking about especially the problems of secondary students being in school and nation. This is a problem nationwide. And by the very fact that we are sitting here addressing it, trying to get deep and trying to figure out what the reality is, I think that's important for us to do so that we do have our facts. You know, I'm going to look at the reality is this month, we're down in every category except one. I'm going to look at the reality of our monthly incidences are down, you know, just February, it's down 60%. That also allows teachers to teach more because they're not being, you know, the disruptions are not taken away from seat time and learning time. I don't know what the school, and I know that's a student, I know that the teachers spend a lot of time at the beginning of the year talking about models of discipline and what we do and what the infractions are. So I think the team is on board with what's doing best for all students, every student.
you have an activity, so I want to continue on to the next.
Okay, just real quick. I totally agree in part in that we are here tonight talking about discipline because it's important. This tonight we have 14 pages. On January workshop, we had 34 pages also on discipline. So good for us. We're talking about discipline because it's important. Yes, I agree.
Now we are going to go to our accountability plan activity. Hopefully we can get this done by 9-ish, but we were hoping for earlier, but time goes fast. Okay, so in this activity, each director can bring up 2 ideas or goals as a potential addition to the superintendent's work plan. This will take place for each of the 6 goals. You don't have to have an addition. It's just, this is our time. If you have an addition, to get it out, 2 per person per goal. Once all of the suggested additions are posted, the director who presented the idea will be given the opportunity to briefly speak on the suggestion. And please do try to keep it brief. And like I said, this will take place for each goal. After each goal suggestions are reviewed, each director will be able to put one of their colored dots. So everyone has a different color next to the suggested addition. You can only put 1 dot per suggestion. Like, you can't put like 3 of your dots next to one to make it 3. It needs to be 3 board members next to the idea. If 3 or more of the dots are placed, then the item will be considered for addition to the plan. But it's important to remember, if we add something, we need to remove something. So if we add something, we consider removing something, because there's a lot in that accountability plan. It's totally fine to change it up, but we should balance it out. And like I said, it is not required to add an item. So, yes.
Since I heard for the first time as a school board director, the superintendent's report on his activities. And we are now tasked with addressing the accountability plan that pertains to him. And we have forestalled the decision of filling out our personal approach to his presentation until Thursday. I would like to recommend, for my benefit, if not everyone else's, that we make this part of our retreat part 2 next Monday.
We have a presenter coming in, so we do not have the capacity at that workshop to add this to it. We have someone coming in to do an activity with us, and that's our activity for the retreat on that day. So we don't have the capacity.
This is where I object, because we as a board haven't got a chance to decide what's going to happen on this agenda. This is a board retreat, and the board retreat should have board input before it gets finalized. And so now you're telling us that we've got to do something tonight.
It was in your agenda. This was this plan not in
We
there?
got it on Thursday or Friday.
That per our policy.
What policy is
The
that?
policy says, I don't know the number off the top of my head. It says you'll get it 3 days before. Do you happen to know the policy number off the top of your head? I don't have the policy number off the top of my head. We have quite a few policies. Yes.
I would suggest, as important as this is, and I view it as very important,
Mhm.
that we forestall this plan activity.
Okay. I personally do not agree, but you guys can weigh in on that.
Is important enough. Most of us have those pieces, and
Yeah.
Paul, we've done it this way in the past.
I know.
That in fact, if it is important, if it's that important to have an issue, because we've been talking at meetings, and so suggestion comes up, it's like, please bring that to the retreat. This is the retreat. It's no surprises. And I think we ought to go through the process. And if something is burning, then we have, this is the process. And I think we've had a plan.
This has been this way for the 4 years that I've been on the board, but
Well, good for you,
oh,
but this is my first time.
okay.
And I'm seeing from this perspective right here
Yeah.
that it's not fair
Okay.
to me.
Okay.
So if you value my opinion,
Oh, okay.
and by the way, this agenda draft could have been in our hands early on, and I would have picked up my book draft before this morning, because this agenda did not come out. Yes, it was online until 10 minutes after 4 on Friday. That presumes that we have nothing to do between Friday night and Monday night. And this really matters to me. It should be obvious to all that I am more than prepared every time we meet. I give lots of waking hours to this. I am seeing this over this weekend for the first time. It matters how we address our superintendent and how we want to see the future of the school district, for crying out loud, proceed. And yet my impression is this is terribly in warp speed.
Okay. I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't agree. That's fine. We do not have to agree on that. I followed the policy, and I know what the policy's there because I read it. So I don't have the number off the top of my head because I don't have all of our policy numbers memorized. And the agenda came out in the appropriate amount of time. And I don't know why you're surprised, really, Paul, because we've done it this way. You've been on the board longer than I have. And this has been done at all of our retreats. And so I guess if 3 people disagree, it can't be done on the next workshop. We'd have to do it at a future date if it was moved.
Like a little support in that the early retreat, which is now, has always been set the mode for the 22-23 school year. It always has. And Dave, you know, I'm sorry that you didn't have that information, or through looking at this through the course of the week, we're able to ascertain that. But Paul, we've always done it this way. And I'd appreciate a little support, because you know we have. You've been a part of it. And the dot thing says what, and the reality is, if somebody has a burning issue, they have a burning issue. And I think we can honor that. And it is fair that we give us this time to do that.
How long were you going to give us to work on this?
But how long?
Yeah, the activity. 15, 20 minutes?
No,
or-
however long it takes.
Okay. Okay. David, how long do you think this will take for you to work on?
Times in my life, I have been told I'm meticulous to the point of fault, and that's a fault. But it's also a plus. Once was at the University of Washington, and once was at seminary. In other words, I will spend so much time to get it right that time is not really the issue. It's getting it right.
Put ideas up there. Your specific item might not move forward. Just to throw that out there. So it's working together, throwing ideas out for each of the goals, and then the collective board use their dots to do it. I mean, anyways, we know where I stand. So if there's 3 people that want to move it, then we can. It will not be at the March 7th workshop, because we have a professional development, which we also do at our workshops. So it would not be fair to cancel on that. I'm taking a motion, but I was also new at one point, and I went. You know you have a burning issue.
We've done agenda items that way.
Yes.
Not this, not this. This is the first time to do this way.
Oh, that is not true. I have done it multiple times on my time on the board at
Okay.
the workshop.
Then either my brain cells are slipping, or you and I weren't at the same meeting.
Well, Carol was at the same meeting as I was, I guess.
If in fact we have an idea to move forward for the accountability plan, it does have to fit in. It does have to fit into one of the 6 categories of the accountability plan. That's all it's asking for. If I decide, you know what, I would like to have more recess in school, where would that be? And I would go put that on student growth or achievement. So that's the categorical topics of that whole thing, is just so that kind of simplifies, and we don't have to say, well, where would this be? Where would that? We should be able to do that. Now, if a person says, gee, I don't think more recess is student growth, maybe it's fiscal responsibility because it's wasting teacher time, we can have that discussion, and it's fair to have that discussion. So that's why we have those three there. Those are the six accountability goals. Our suggestions should fit in within those 6 goals. Or how relevant are they?
I just want to add that what you all would determine is the what,
Yes.
and then I would determine the how. I just don't want us to get so far into like recess or.
And like I've said many times, that's really hard. It's really hard for us to walk away because
I don't think this is going to be our last time discussing this either. So that gives us great opportunity right now to kind of collaborate, come with ideas, bring it to the board and to the paperwork that we have here. And I mean, we're going to come back around to this, right? I mean, do we
Well,
have clarification on that?
This usually, so we have our accountability plan. You saw it tonight, all of the things. This is if people want to add to it. Not all the time do we add things to it because we think that it's accurate and that's still the information that we want to know. So this, what we come up with, the 3 dots, then we figure out how we can add it into the accountability plan. We're not changing the entire accountability plan. It's just adding things in if we want to, or taking things away that maybe aren't relevant anymore for next year. And we do that at our retreats. I use that word loosely because it's not my type of retreat, but
Right. So we will come back around anyways, back to this. I mean, this is what we do. We evaluate. So, I mean, in essence, that would give us, this is like a starting point, right? And anyways, we're always going to have to go back to the drawing boards and recreate and edit. So, I mean, how about right now we just spend our time, getting down and dirty, figuring out some new solutions and put them up on the boards here. It sounds like a good time to me.
and we do evaluate.
Yeah.
We evaluate them annually.
And then, things change, right? Maybe 6 months from a year from now, you'll have that even more, figured out and due diligent. It will be there.
Trying to find that policy. Carol, where are you going? You want to write? Oh my gosh. Okay. 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 Okay, 5 minutes. We'll do a 5-minute break for Carol to
about COVID recovery still, not just for students, but even for what our staff and what has happened this year and what the continuance of what's going to happen for the next 2 to 3 years is what they're saying for COVID recovery. It's going to take at least 2 to 3 more years at least. So I personally, well, and so like I'm pretty much interested in COVID recovery, which means there's not going to be a lot of change because we can't come up with new and improved during this tumultuous time of this pandemic that we've been going through.
Recovery, and then we can figure out what that would look like on what. Then you, yeah, then you, yeah. I don't know, I'm still thinking, but while we're on the record and back from our bathroom break, I said to Paul and David, and I'll just say to everyone else, the policy that I was referencing earlier is policy 1420 about the agendas. I agree with you, Carol, so I'm kind of, when we do that, so I'll be with you. All right, I don't know if we want to go by goal, maybe. I think that that'd be more organized. Well, if there's not that many, maybe we just go to goal 1. If you want to write, that's fine. And then to write. Okay. So goal 1 is student growth. Yeah. Yeah. Graduation is meaningless. Okay. I'm just going to say for the record, because Ron, I don't think graduation rates are meaningless, and I do not want to be on the side of that. So the state sets guidelines, and if you don't agree with the set guidelines, I mean, I have a hard time believing that the entire state of Washington has a diploma mill, which is essentially what you're referring to. Yeah. No, we're not doing the dots. We're going through. If anyone else has, okay, that's fine. Okay, is there not test scores in here? There's, I guess it's 5th grade score. So. Yeah, there you go.
Goal 2, parent and community engagement.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Anybody have any suggestions for any parent or engagement community additions for the accountability plan?
I think we do a good job on this one. That'd be on the board side though, right? Not the superintendent's accountability plan. Yeah, okay. Well, I was just clarifying. Okay.
Anything else? Goal 3, communications with stakeholders.
I mean, I like the metrics that we have. I want to continue to see them increase.
So what would this read as? For something for Ron to do, what would this read as? How is that different than the 3 social media services? Guys, you know,
You wanted us to reply back to the comments?
it's just not a Ron thing, that's a board thing. So that really
No, no, that's that would be
is that a Sue thing?
that's a how.
Okay, so
That's a
what-
how.
What response to social media? Any other communications with stakeholders?
No, I had a question about it. When we talk about social media and Instagram, especially, there's such a broad spectrum of growing your Instagram account or Facebook. So I'm just curious with that 16% of growth, is that in just the, it could be the whole world, at this point. So are we reaching more and advertising, I guess, within our community, right? Of the Lakewood area?
I don't know if you know that because you don't really know who is on the
Right.
other end of the Instagram, right? Because many times people's Instagrams are private, so you wouldn't know
Mm-hmm.
who's liking it.
And I get it, marketing broad is good because we've got people that are flying in from different states through JB, and it's important for them sometimes to already have an alignment with what school they want to go to. So that helps. I'm not saying it's necessarily negative, but just want to make sure we're reaching our main audience right here at home too.
So do you have a topic to add? Or is this just a study thing? That you would like to
More
add?
of a
Is that
more of a study thing too, just to kind of see, or maybe something to work on within that category.
You already have it on here, so I don't know what, I don't want to do the how, but I always am interested on the exit surveys.
but if it's already there,
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not sure if there would be, I'm always interested in why people are leaving, and you can't force people to tell you why they're leaving, or maybe, they go to a private school. What would it take for them to get back? I'm always curious of that, but it's already a metric. So I don't really, the metric is students exiting and entering. Do we do an exit survey? But they're not. But the exit survey is that in here?
are you speaking staff or
Families. Sorry.
family? That's not-
Sorry. So yes. Yeah. And it's in our packet. Yeah. I was just wondering if there was a way to, probably not, because there's a lot of reasons. Never mind. We have the information. I can collect it myself.
With communication to our stakeholders. I think there are 2 questions that are important to look at. What do we want to be known for? And what are we known for? So you can look at your mission statement, your vision statement, Is that what we want to be known for? And the question is, are we being known that way in our community? And social media gives you an opportunity to start having that dialogue. You know, it works. It works. And the successful companies are doing this. But, you know, it's a step out, and it's something we have to work on, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But is that, and I'm gonna be I'll be the problem. Is that a what or is that a how?
It's a how.
We get to say to him, communication with stakeholders. We don't necessarily get to say, oh, by the way, so we have to be really careful, and it's hard, and we know this. Is that a what or a how? So these are the what to do.
What do we want to be known for? As a board, what do we want to be known for in this district?
How would that be in the, what would you put in the accountability plan? Like, what would that look like? What do we want to be known for? What are we measuring?
Yeah, what measurement tool? What tool of measurement would we use? Because we have to have a tool of measurement for all part of this.
Well, you can just look at the data that you collect from your Instagram, things that come out when people put messages on there. You can find out what they think. When you start looking at those and tabulating them, you go, oh, we're not being seen for what people think we are.
Okay, I don't disagree, but I think that people have a tendency to say negative things on social media rather than positive. I mean, when you think of a bad experience, you tend to go out and complain about it. So I would be weary that the results would be skewed, because you're getting people who are upset, who are frustrated, the people who are like, oh, things are going great, or yeah, things are going fine. They're not the ones to make comments on social media.
The thing I've learned in business
Okay,
is dealing with people that have issues is the way to turn business around. That's been my experience. I can tell you, when my employees came to me saying, hey, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones is coming to see me today because they're upset. And so I say, so I try to get as much information as I can. You know, what's their issue? So before and then I did my very best to meet them at the door when they came into the business. I met them at the door, and I already knew what I was willing to give to solve the problem. I already knew. And so my first question to them is, you know, I'd introduce myself, said, how may I help you today? And oh, by the way, what would it take to make this right with you? You know what? They never asked for more than 50% of what I was willing to give. Never. So, you know, so as we work with people, that's what we need to work with our community. In my opinion, you know, that's what you're asking here.
I'm asking, yes, I am, but how are we going to measure that in Superintendent Banner's
Okay, so
accountability
we're already
plan?
counting how many people are, you know, we didn't give total numbers, we gave percentages, which don't tell me anything.
The numbers are in there of how many followers, and like,
I guess I didn't see it.
they're in there. I read them all.
Okay, all right. So you get your followers. Okay, then how many people did we respond to? We can't respond to everybody. That's not even physically possible. But if we start getting to where we do respond to some, people are going to go, wow. And that's what we want to hear in the community. Wow.
Mhm.
And that's how you do it. So certainly they're going to come up with some negative things, but they're going to be some positives too. Well,
Input. Yeah.
So maybe sharing more reality.
I'll challenge you a little bit, Carol.
This is
If
a how.
it's reality, then we've got all these documented things. That's a big number. You don't know what's hidden in there. And the data, when you look at police reports, you can talk to your son-in-law.
Oh.
You know, only about 50% of the stuff gets reported. So what we're seeing is what's getting reported. And then we got stuff that's hidden that we don't understand. Until we see what's all hidden in that number, that big number, we don't know. So I'm just suggesting that you've got truth. Let's talk about truth for just a minute. What is true and what is,
We're going, let's
I think
focus
we're
on the
track
plan.
and it's
Yep.
getting it's almost 9 o'clock.
It's not, it doesn't have a cord.
Oh.
It doesn't have a cord.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. Especially if it's being recorded, I appreciate that. The reality is, what can we put up there for him, for our superintendent for increased communication with stakeholders? We need what we can do that's measurable and that we don't have currently.
I told you
What?
once already, and I'll tell you again.
Tell me again.
I don't think that there is.
How
a
many-
way.
How many Instagrams, how many Facebooks, and how many Twitters do we respond to? How many? Okay,
No.
just measure that number.
Okay, I will just sort of, I don't think that is, I've had a business page and that data, I did not believe is on there. So I don't know how we would, and that's a how, but you can write that up. I mean, write it up there, but it's a how. Social media response. Are there any others? Okay, goal 4, supportive learning environments for students.
I put down COVID recovery.
Okay,
And-
Carol,
Bob, give me a microphone. Okay. I personally put down COVID recovery without anything with it because that's up to the superintendent to figure out. Anybody else?
yeah, I would, it goes along with COVID recovery, but social and emotional support, which I know that we're already doing, but is there a way to measure the success of the counseling, the additional money that we have going into counseling and the effects of that? I don't know if that is, so
So how do you want me to write that as a sentence and not a
just
paragraph?
say social and emotional ongoing support. Does that make sense, Ron? Help me out. Yeah, there's a lot of money going into it, as they should. Their students have had a rough time. Is there a way to measure it? Maybe. I'm not sure. That would be a how.
Right now, what we've done in our whole supportive learning environment for students, basically we do a survey. And surveys are, I personally don't like surveys because they're very subjective. It's not measuring hard stuff. Maybe the thing we need to do is, if we've got people involved in social emotional learning, have them write down the things that they're working on, or they see 100 students a month, what kinds of things are they working with those students? What's the feedback they're getting from those students? You know, we have to be careful we protect that we don't compromise IDs and those kind of things. But certainly, what are the things that young people are seeing counselors for? Is it bad home life? Is it, but I think those are some things that we need to look at. You know, Anthony's talked about things that students want to learn. What do they want to know? What do they need to know? And are we getting those pieces of information? And then certainly there's some things we can measure here, post-graduation data from students to say, you know what, I wasn't prepared for this. And so how do we get that information, real-time data from students that are, you know, trying to take on a college degree or a job? What is it they need? You know, that the young men and women that I've talked to in our community that are starting businesses said, man, I don't know how to do my taxes. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. Is that our job or not our job? That those are some things I think we need to look at here instead of, well, I feel safe. Well, shoot, who knows how safe I feel? That's the kind of questions we're asking here. So anyhow, that's my thoughts there.
So what am I writing down? Because that's a lot of how to do
Really,
things,
I know.
and I worry
It's
about
not
that.
how to do. It's just to measure what people are being counseled for.
My question to that, just, are we allowed to know that? Usually you don't get to know necessarily what students' issues are. If it's a home life issue, I don't know if under HIPAA, we would even be allowed that information.
I would have to check with Greater Lakes, Cohen, the Cohen Center that we use for Thomas, the SBH folks on base, the MFLAX. We'd have to know where that line is in terms of categorizing what they're supporting. You're not going to tell a student, oh, tell me, there's going to be a line there that I'm not sure of. So.
I don't disagree. I agree with you that there's probably a line somewhere.
Yeah.
But we can start categorizing and say, hey, these are the things that young people are working with. Okay, then what kinds of things can we talk about to help change that paradigm? Or not talk about what can we teach, what activities can we do that maybe help all our students? Because if this student over here is having that problem, there's probably half a dozen more that hasn't said anything that aren't even seeing a counselor. But now you're getting real data instead of a survey that says,
Okay, so
But
would that be under social and emotional?
That would be under
measurement?
social emotional measurement of success. Those questions would answer that.
So that's
Because
our how.
the questions that you're asking
what?
are definitely what's, how to do something, how to figure this out. It's not the what. This would cover all that, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
It should.
I think when we talk about the CEE survey, these are, I'll actually ask Brian to come in and talk a little bit about them, but around these aren't just willy-nilly surveys, right? They have some oomph behind them. Not sure that's a very technical term, but it's not just something that we came up with, and when you ask enough kids in different, right? If you've seen surveys, a lot of times they ask the same question 3 different times in 3 different ways to see if the answers are valid over a course of a number of participants, right? And so that's where they get their validity. Brian, I know I'm starting to ramble here, but help me, like, you're the science guy. Am I right in here?
Center for Educational Effectiveness was set up probably in the early 2000s and has been collecting data on these questions for the past 20 years. It was founded by a Microsoft engineer who, along with some other individuals, created the survey questions. They've been refined over time, but has been in place for 20 odd years. Was a paper pencil test or survey initially, and then became electronic, but they do organize it by themes as well. So there are themes that you can look at in addition to the questions themselves. So you could look at a specific theme if you wanted to.
I think the science behind it is if yes, there are always going to be, if you're filling out a survey, somebody who just wants to get it done and they might just bubble in, but that's why you do a certain sample size, a certain end size, so that you know that there's validity in the responses or in the thematic responses that come through. And so I just don't want to discount all surveys.
I don't disagree with you on that. However, we've been doing this, as Brian just said, 20 years. Are we moving the needle in the right direction? I don't think so.
Well, there was some data here that says we are moving the needle in the right direction.
Okay.
Those 6 things, every one of them increased with feeling safe in school, that a cat would carry an adult in their house for both staff, for both students and families. So there was an increase on all 6 of them. So obviously there's moving the needle somewhat in some way. And if it's not just a yes, no, maybe so sort of survey, which I don't think it is. And I think that the students take the survey rather seriously now, just because the staff takes it serious. And as they're doing it, I think that's part of the conversations.
All right, is there anything else to add? I think that falls under social, emotional measurements, because that many of those would be the how. So, but they could fall under that. If Superintendent Banner so chooses. Is there anything else under goal 4? Okay, so we'll go to goal 5. Recruitment, staff retention, and professional development. Yeah, this is a hard one just because of the nature of the world. We just have to keep working on retaining staff members, but I think our measurements are right. And now will continue to be up to Superintendent Banner of, do the numbers of staff retention reflect what we want them to?
The first thing I would like to see on this list is a board staff listening session.
Okay. But okay, I'm not trying to go against you, but this is the superintendent's accountability plan, and that's a board staff, which wouldn't fall under the superintendent's accountability plan.
Oh, yes, it would.
Well, why? But it's not a measurement for him.
What happens if your superintendent's a bully?
Oh,
How would you find that out?
okay, that would be something that we decide. It wouldn't go on the accountability plan. This is what we're asking Superintendent Banner to do.
Okay.
That's something we would do as a board, which many would probably think it was below the line because we're going around him and talking to the staff.
Yes.
Which I would think is inappropriate without him leading the ship there. But I don't think it falls into the accountability plan if you're suggesting that he doesn't have a say in it.
Well, right now, the way the board gets information is from the superintendent and his staff.
Yeah. That you
So
hire someone you trust.
Everything's filtered through that filter.
Yep.
We have no way to reconcile that to anything.
That's how boards are, but that you hire someone that you trust, and then if you're not happy with how the district is going, you may have to find a different path. That is how boards
There's
work.
a way to do it. I mean, my previous career in the Marine Corps, I worked for the Board of Inspection and Survey. The Board of Inspection and Survey, the CNO sends the Board of Inspection and Survey to inspect every ship once every 5 years. Okay, now the Chief of Naval Operations gets all his information from his line commanders. Okay, but the Board of Inspection goes out there and looks at what those line commanders are doing and then reports to CNO. So now the CNO has 2 reports from his line management, which would be through us as a board from the superintendent. And the other one is from what his Board of Inspection and Survey found out. You know what? If both reports measure the same, life is good.
Mhm.
The question is if you get different reports, then what do? You know, and so, but that's the way you find out if you're going in the right direction.
Okay.
It tells whether you got a good thing. So I think to me, it's a very good thing to do.
Okay. It still wouldn't fall under the accountability plan, but it is something that we as a board could
Well,
decide.
it's as good as a survey. Unfortunately, this is the survey that we as a board would do, and now we have data to put in our report.
But we're measuring him on something that we're then excluding him from.
That's his work. We're evaluating him
We're not
on his
excluding
work.
him.
But you just said the board and the staff, which would bypass Superintendent Banner. And we've all taken the WASDA trainings, and there's a very clear below the line, and it's not, it says you don't go past the superintendent to talk to the staff. You funnel things through the superintendent because that is the appropriate way to do things. We've all taken that training.
5 stands as is.
Well, I don't know how you can write it down.
What am I writing?
I guess.
Board, staff.
Now, and I'm going to say, you know, we talk about.
Why don't you just write it down? We'll put our dots by it if we want it.
Board what? You get follow board.
Staff. Mhm.
Board, staff, listening session.
Well, it's probably because are they dry erase pens? That's probably why they're not like Sharpies. They're whiteboard pens. They're not Sharpies. Okay. Okay, fiscal responsibilities.
I would like to see something on here. We've fallen into the trap that most organizations do, that if we spend more money, we're going to be better. I would like to see some proposals to figure out how we save money. We go back and say, you know, we don't need this money. We can do something different.
Okay, so cutting the budget.
Yeah, that's a start.
Worry about that one because we've been asking for more money because we say education is not fully funded, and now we're looking at giving the money back.
When are we expecting for the ESSER dollars to go away for like counseling?
A year and a half, I think you said.
Either 2024 is the last year that we can spend those dollars.
So is it too soon then to start planning ahead for that budget? Because I still think there will be some high stress for counseling, and you know, where do we get those extra dollars now for those costs?
Yeah, we could, I mean, I guess we don't know what the future will hold. So I guess every year we do this. So as we go on, if we see that things are getting easier, maybe we don't need the money, then sure. I mean, I worry about that in COVID times. We have no idea when the federal funding is getting cut off. We don't know those things. I'm hopeful it will get better, which if it gets better, that means we most likely will not have the extra federal money. So, but every year, so if it's 2024, maybe in 2023, we'll have a better idea of when that federal aid will stop coming.
Okay.
Oh, we know Superintendent Banner said it will be gone in 2024.
Right.
Director Hart, can you give me the actual date? I want to say December.
I do remember.
Yeah, it's September of 2024.
Yeah, there's a lot of federal assistance now, so I feel like it kind of skews money numbers a lot because working with grants.
I guess how do we predict financial expenses for counseling when ESSER dollars?
Oh,
Or
would that So would that be under the social and emotional, but it's tied to that? So it's social and emotional because counseling falls under that, but you want to see like an estimate of what funds will be needed for social and emotional after the ESSER dollars.
Right, exactly.
So I would say,
Almost a forecast.
Oh.
Is that an evaluation thing or is that a workshop topic? To me, it seems more workshop than evaluation piece.
Right.
it was probably what you think. Not, it could be a workshop topic, but if you want to see like financial responsibility related to that, if he wants a measurement of that, we wrote down everything else.
Right, I'm just
Yeah, just a measurement,
measurement of.
basically, for the ESSER dollars.
What,
You want a
like,
measurement or you want
Actually a plan for the measurement of where to get those finances when the ESSER dollars are, when it's over.
so what state funding or maybe other
Right,
federal funding?
right.
Are we messing?
Just funding.
Funding.
Mhm. Right. Right, right. That's it. Yep.
sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely. Yeah, especially when it comes to mental health and just having those additional communication counselors, just to have that. I think that's a good way to help
So-
break barriers.
She added sustainability on
Added
there. You
sustainability.
added, you kind of
Right.
used that word. I thought it was good. I think that's good.
You know, here's the one thing I put down: COVID recovery, which I think kind of blankets everything. It blankets the financial responsibility and the sustainability. It blankets, maybe not, it blankets much of this. I personally would like a seventh one, which says, I think we have enough on our plate with this COVID recovery in the next, like I said, it's got to be 3 to 5 years is what they're saying. I would like no change.
Well, but if you put a dot next to COVID recovery, that's
I'm
what you're
just saying,
saying.
I just-
That's what you're saying. to
Well,
focus on.
yeah, I just, or, you know, I mean, I think a lot of these topics are very good workshop topics. They're very good. I think they're very good for information. Many of them are. But I think the reality is, I personally feel what we've asked from our staff and what we continue to ask from them, what we're going to be asking from our families, we need to stay the course so that instead of trying to do something new and improve, are we doing what we need to do well? So anyway, that's just my two comments and
Mhm.
So what is it that we need to do well? Educational competence. That's our job. That's our
Yes.
job.
Paul, I'm going to say something.
Don't.
We have 3 topics. We hire the superintendent, we approve the policies, and we establish the budget. We accept the budget. He is supposed to continue on academic excellence. He's supposed to make sure that budget is set and ready to go. That's his job. And we all know the school board has, actually, it's kind of a misnomer of what we can do.
Mhm.
Those 3 topics are our main topics, and we all know that.
And this whole plan is to get academic excellence. This plan is to support our students so they can excel in life. So I guess I have a hard time with that when it's like we don't focus on academic excellence. Well, isn't everything in here to support our students in our district to try to make sure that our students are functioning adults that can give back to society? I would say it is.
If what we do does not improve student achievement and student success as defined by our 4 pillars, then that's where the problem is, and that's what we're not doing right. We have to ask ourselves, does this improve student success? And many of these things do. But I think I personally, I'm going to say it again, and those are workshop topics because those are under the purview of what we can actually do.
We'll go on to our dots. You do not have to use them all if you're in the same camp as Carol, where you just want to focus on COVID recovery. You think the district has enough on its plate for this year. Maybe just go with the COVID recovery. And then we're going to come back to this in the next school year and do it again. Maybe COVID will be different. Maybe people will be maskless and not getting sick, and we'll be able to focus on other things.
And the other thing is when we do put something else on his plate,
We have to
well, not only take it off, but then at our retreat this summer, the plan on how to enact these things will then come back to us. So he will take, let's say for planning for funding, he will then, if we decide we all want to do the plan for funding, he will then come back to us with that plan and what that would look like for the district and what timeline that would be on, where the accountability is on that. So we will get the answers to all of this if we get 3 or more in June.
Well, and just a reminder, just because it's added, it's for him to look into. It may not be a possibility, like a measurable thing may not work. Maybe it is a workshop topic. This is just for Superintendent Banner to determine the how, if 3 people choose it. So anyway, we all have a sticker color. You can put 1 dot next to each thing. You don't have to use them all. You can use them all, your choice, but let's go to the board. Like Carol said, maybe some of these are workshop topics. I'm sure COVID recovery will be spoken about time and time again and more times. So social and emotional measurements of resources. Just as a reminder, this does not guarantee that it will what it will be on it. It's Superintendent Banner's responsibility to go look at what those measurements might look like and then come back to us for that. Do you have any questions? Yeah. Yeah, I know. Okay. We do not have an executive session tonight. So no executive session. So if there are no further, yes.
What's on the agenda? On March the 7th?
We were just finalizing it because we had, like I mentioned, professional. We're having another meeting.
The presenter on Friday finalizing.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize we were having another meeting.
No, we were.
Oh, yes, we just did on Friday. Mary Fertakis. That was we asked for many different options, and that was literally the only availability. So.
And this is regarding.
It's just it's just board working together as a board, how we can come up with goals that we can all agree on to further support our students. Just professional development.
Is that the only item on the agenda?
Yeah, it's like there's multiple sections to it, and we can send that out. We were just finalizing it up. We had a meeting on Friday. So.
When can we expect to get that?
Tomorrow.
A week in advance. Almost.
Yeah, we have it. So
I have two questions. This discipline policy first reading, when does that come up again?
What first?
Yeah, so we had a first reading of the discipline policy on February.
Oh yeah, it will be at the next regular. Oh yeah.
March 14th.
Yeah, March
next
14th.
regular meeting.
At which time it'll be a second reading?
Yeah, the second reading is when we adopt it into as a policy.
Unless, of course, it.
Yeah, but the second reading means that you're voting to move it into policy.
Now, the cultural competency, equity, diversity, inclusion, that was on the February 14th, and we moved that off.
Yes.
When does that come up again?
We don't have a set date for it at this moment because you wanted to talk about it in a workshop, correct? We haven't made it a plan to.
Doesn't matter.
Oh wait, hold on. That's for you said with the training. We're gonna have
We're working with Tim Garchaw to set a time that works for him to come and speak to the board on the 5044.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So that will be at a future workshop. And just as for the agendas, we do try to get them out, but if you recall, we did have a change in what was going to be on the agenda. So we had to shift and get the discipline report in here. So
well, one of the things I appreciated recently, I've only seen it once from our communications department, was a publication in Suburban Times of what the board did at the regular meeting. It was within a couple of days. It was a summary. It wasn't verbatim, but it was a good encapsulation of what happened at the board meeting that night. I thought that was a good step. And also, just for my personal benefit, because of my nature, the more in advance we can get information out so that we can prepare, the better. Thank you.
And David. And I'm with you. We do try to get it out as soon as possible, but there are changes, and there's a lot more changes nowadays than there used to be, which is fine, but that means that we have to pivot and change and go back to the drawing board to finalize the agenda.
Understand that. One time I got an agenda that said draft. I'm okay with that. I realize things change, but if I could have a draft that gives me a direction to go, that's helpful.
Understood. And we will always stick within the policy, and we will try to get it out earlier if we can. But I don't want to make any guarantees because that might set me up for failure.
Styles, if I get it too soon, I get it, and a good week in advance for me is probably best, even though I sometimes will get closer to a date so I can study it better and have it more fresh in my mind. So a happy medium.
When our board meetings are like every 2
Yeah.
weeks, give and take, 2 weeks. So there has to be time in the middle to work on the next agenda. So there, our meetings are not very far apart. So just good reminder, but I'm with you. I don't want to make any promises because I don't want to, I want to align with the policy. And if we can get it out sooner, you'll know. We'll try. So, okay. It is 9:30. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Anthony. Is there a second? I'm like, does anyone want to leave? Okay. Seconded by Carol. All those in favor say aye. And we adjourn at 9:30. Huh? Right on the dot.